Well, good morning, everybody. It is 10 o'clock, and it is my pleasure to open this regularly scheduled meeting of the El Dorado County Board of Supervisors this Tuesday, May 14th, 2024. And we are absolutely delighted to be up here in the City Council chambers of South Lake Tahoe. And just want to thank Supervisor Lane and Lisa for setting up this amazing agenda today. Really looking forward to the schedule and the tour later on this afternoon. And it is a pleasure to be in your neck of the woods. That's fair.
Well, thank you. And it's just an honor to have the Board of Supervisors up here in Tahoe. And we hope that this will be more of a routine going forward and not such a one-off.
It's a wonderful, wonderful idea. We're delighted to be here and we look forward to being back in the fall, I believe.
And you're welcome for the weather.
And thank you all to our staff for joining from the West Slope that came up with us today, and all of you that are here in Tahoe. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. So with that, it is my pleasure to welcome Rabbi Evan Yakar of the Temple Bat Yam here in South Lake Tahoe. Rabbi, it is a pleasure to have you with us today to offer this morning's invocation.
Thank you. Morning. Good morning. Thank you for the honor of providing words of invocation this morning, and thank you for your efforts on behalf of the citizens of El Dorado County. Here in South Lake Tahoe, we are grateful for your commitment to hold your meeting here in the Tahoe Basin. It is a particularly poignant moment for the Jewish people. Today we mark Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel's Independence Day, honoring 76 years of the State of Israel. We are challenged by the realities of war in Israel and Gaza and pray constantly for resolution, return of hostages, end of hostilities, and possibilities for true and peaceful self-determination for all people. The members of the Jewish community here in El Dorado County are grateful and express gratitude to the El Dorado County Sheriff's Department, who have been wonderful partners, ensuring our right to freedom of religious expression is available and safe here at Temple Bat Yam. The incidence and rise in anti-Semitism is scary for the Jewish citizens and voters of our county. May we all have the strength and the courage to work for a time that truly celebrates the tapestry of humanity, including various opinions, beliefs, faiths, and political ideals. This echoes our hopes and our dreams for our place in the world too. May your work as our county supervisors model the embrace of all our county residents. May the leadership you demonstrate see to the needs our county demands at this moment and all the time. We pray, Hamakom, may the one who is ever present grant each of us the ability to build a future as a model for others. May our courage lead us to understand what it means to be a neighbor. In the words of Rabbi Joachim Prinz, neighbor is not a geographic term. It is a moral concept. It means our collective responsibility for the preservation of everyone's dignity and integrity. And we can say together, Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. We share your prayers for a successful resolution and return of hostages. Thank you. With that, Supervisor Lane, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Please join me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Couple housekeeping rules before we dig into our agenda. I'd like my colleagues to know that these microphones, you just touch the button if you wish. I turned myself off. And I would like to welcome Assistant CAO Sue Henneke. Privileged to have you with us. Tiffany is out sick, which we wish her a speedy recovery, and we're happy to also have Assistant CAO Laura Schwartz with us in the audience. So thank you for supporting our meeting today. With that, we move on to the adoption of the agenda and the approval of the consent calendar. Supervisor Heidel, do you have any changes or comments?
No changes. How this works. No changes.
There we go. Supervisor Lane.
No changes.
Supervisor Turnbull.
No changes.
Supervisor Carlin.
No changes.
All right, excellent. Nor do I. So at this point, we will take
Madam Chair,
Yeah, oh, pardon me.
I apologize. The Planning and Building Department has asked that they continue item 17 off calendar.
That's right. I apologize that I didn't ask you.
That's okay.
Continue item 17 from our consent calendar off calendar. Thank you. All right. So with this time, we will have public comments on the consent calendar. Kim, can you please open that up?
Now taking public comment on the consent calendar. Individuals will have 3 minutes to address the board. The timer will notify you when your time is up. Public comment will be taken first from those participating in the boardroom and then from those participating through Zoom. For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. If you're joining the meeting by phone, press *9 to indicate a desire to comment. If you're joining by Zoom, press the raise hand button. Please voluntarily state your name for the record.
Once again, this is on anything on the consent calendar. All right, anyone? I'm not seeing anyone.
Now
Do we
taking
have anyone
public
online?
comment from online participants. There's no public comment.
Thank you. I will bring that back to the board for approval of the agenda and action.
Adoption of the agenda and approval of the consent calendar with the following change. Continue item 17 off calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Supervisor Parlin, seconded by Supervisor Heidel. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Excellent. We will now move into item number 20, our 10 a.m. time allocation. Kim, can you please open this agenda item?
Of course. Item 20 comes from Planning and Building Department, Tahoe Planning, Stormwater and Vacation Home Rental Division, recommending the board consider the following. 1, receive and file a presentation on the vacation home rental program. And 2, provide direction to staff regarding potential program adjustments and/or amendments to the vacation home rental ordinance.
Well, Brendan, it is a pleasure for us to be with you for a change. Good morning.
Good morning, and it is wonderful to see you all in Tahoe today. Thank you so much for making the trek up the hill. I know Supervisor Lane thanks you all for taking the long drive today instead of her, right? She had the short drive for a change.
Yep.
Good morning to the audience. I thought that was nice how Rabbi Yakar did that. One thing to note too is you're going to be stuck with me for a big part of today.
Excellent.
So I apologize for that in advance, but you'll also interact with many of my staff and teammates. And I'm really excited actually to introduce you to a couple new folks. Supervisor Lane, would you like to say anything to start, or do you want me to keep going? I'm happy to keep going.
You keep going.
Okay. Let me, in the spirit of our team and our team Tahoe here, let me introduce you to 2 new VHR staff that the board has authorized funding for. First, I want to introduce you to Kevin Bailey. This is Kevin. Recently hired, and he's our brand new code enforcement supervisor on VHR stationed in the Tahoe Basin. And we are incredibly thrilled to have Kevin. He has so much experience. He is coming up with ideas left, right, and center, honestly. And I think really exciting things are happening. I also want to introduce Tracy Lennox. Here's Tracy. She's our new code enforcement officer on VHRs. She's also stationed in Tahoe. We also have Danielle Soto. So we have a team of 3 in Tahoe, code enforcement officers working on VHRs, and we're just thrilled to have them. So it's exciting. Excuse me 1 second.
Welcome. We're delighted to have them too.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. Kevin could get up and give this presentation better than I could, I bet, at this point. So I'm going to provide an update on the county's vacation home rental program, and I'm going to seek board direction on program adjustments and ordinance amendments. And as part of this item, I'm also going to summarize the advisory committee's recommendations report to Supervisor Lane and provide recommendations based on that report. And the clicker works. You never know. I've never presented in this room. So first, let me give you a quick look at current VHR permit data. There are currently 804 active permits in the Tahoe Basin and 142 permits on the West Slope. The number of permits in Tahoe has been decreasing due to the clustering policy that the board adopted in 2021. And conversely, the number of permits on the West Slope has been increasing. We also manage a wait list for individuals who would like to apply for a permit. They are within a buffer and currently cannot apply. So we do hold them on a list. We currently have 204 in Tahoe and 15 on the West Slope. And finally, as you can see on that slide, we have 140 hosted rentals in the county. Approximately 2/3 of that, 2/3 of them, believe it or not, are on the West Slope. I was surprised to hear that myself. 1/3 approximately are in Tahoe, and they're registered with the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office. They do have a business license, and they do pay TOT, transient occupancy tax. As you may recall, on May 2nd, 2023, I presented to this board, and in that presentation, I did receive board direction on 4 program adjustments, and they're listed here on this slide. Just quickly, they were requiring compliance with the county's vegetation management ordinance prior to issuing or renewing a VHR permit, increasing fine amounts for violations of the VHR ordinance per Senate Bill 60, expanding VHR permit suspension options, and allowing local contacts to be decertified for not performing their duties. Those are all critical recommendations. Staff still agrees that those adjustments are needed. And the advisory committee, who I need to talk about here in a second, also agreed with those recommendations. Okay, on to the advisory committee to Supervisor Lane. So at that same meeting last year, if you'll recall, the board recommended Supervisor Lane convene an advisory committee on VHRs to meet and deliberate on additional program recommendations for her to consider. Following that, Supervisor Lane and a facilitation consultant who was fantastic that we hired named Zephyr Collaboration created an application for the committee and ultimately selected 13 members with a variety of viewpoints on VHR. So we had the full spectrum, right? Love them, hate them, everything in between. Just to be totally frank, many of them are here. So you may hear from some of them today. The advisory committee met beginning in September 2023 and had 6 meetings over the following months and produced a final recommendations report, which is attached to this item. It was extremely detailed. They worked late into the night during snowstorms. Truly, Supervisor Lane brought dinner. We met until 9 p.m. often. Worked through tough issues and debated with civility. And those are all really notable achievements, and I really want to commend them for their work. So thank you to all of you out there. I see most of them out there, actually.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Pretty cool, yeah. Okay. Oh, nope, I'm not ready to do that yet, I don't think. Yes, I am. Sorry about that. Okay, so their report focused primarily on the theme of enhanced enforcement. That's where we're headed here. That's why I introduced these two. They also produced a number of consensus recommendations. The report was highly detailed, as I mentioned, so I'm not going to talk about every detail here. That would be just too much, considering the timing we have. We're still evaluating all those recommendations, and hopefully the board has had a chance to look through them. However, staff does agree with all of the high-level recommendations in the report. So I just want to note that. And if the board agrees to the following changes and the 4 that I previously showed, we will return with an amended ordinance, hopefully sometime this summer, and we'll make the necessary program adjustments. We then want to collect data and analyze that data to inform our decisions moving forward on how well the program's operating based on those adjustments. That can then inform future decisions on coming back to the board as we continue to tweak this program to get it as right as we can for the board, for the citizens, for VHR owners, et cetera. Okay, so the first recommendation on this slide is to reduce the cap for VHR permits in the Tahoe Basin from 900 to 600. The 600 number equates to the estimated number of VHRs that could legally exist if they were spaced 500 feet apart. We did a little GIS analysis to look at that. As you know, the clustering policy governs permits now, not the cap. I showed you we're at 804 permits, so we're down below that 900 cap. The board could decide to lower the cap. I guess I would leave that to the board and your discussion and your direction. If you do decide to lower it, we recommend permits continue to be phased out through attrition like they are now, instead of actively just going for 600 permits. One thing to note, though, is that by lowering the cap, we do not address VHR clusters. Okay, the next recommendation is to develop regulations for better accountability of hosted rentals. We agree with this recommendation and recommend the board direct staff to develop additional regulations for hosted rentals, including requiring a VHR permit of some kind. It may not be the exact same permit, maybe something a little lesser, but we need to look at that. Hosted rentals do provide value to locals because locals can generate income that allows them to stay in their homes. We all know how costly homes are in the world now, and especially in Tahoe. However, individuals are taking advantage of the system. We know that. And so we need to close that loop. We need to look at whether, what the permit fee amount would be. Are they subject to fire inspections? Should they be subject to the clustering policy and the cap? And the advisory committee talked about many of those things. They didn't reach consensus on all those things, as you can see in Appendix A of the report, things like occupancy. So if the board has direction on any of those, we're absolutely open to them. I guess I would ask to have some confidence in staff to go back and redline the ordinance and really come up with what we think are the right recommendations on that. However, if you have recommendations, of course, we want to hear them. Okay, the third is to invest in a dedicated VHR enforcement unit. Look what we're doing here. So we completely agree there should be a dedicated unit within the code enforcement team. The board has previously authorized funding for those 3 new positions, 2 on VHR, 1 on ranch marketing. Those are all filled. We're already moving on this. And I think we have the resources right now that are sufficient to jump into changing the enforcement, the way we do enforcement of the program, and to see how it's working. So we're already working on that one. 4 is to develop a centrally managed complaint tracking and response system. Staff agrees with this recommendation and asks that the board direct staff to develop a system like this. We are currently working with the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office to move to a new enforcement vendor called Rentalscape. Rentalscape was actually listed as one of the recommendations in the advisory committee's report. We're currently using Host Compliance. They have been not performing their duties as well as we'd like, honestly. And so we are going to move to Rentalscape on July 1st. You'll see that contract come before this board, but we're working out the details now. We also have some Treasurer Tax Collector staff present with us, and we've been working really closely with them. They're just fantastic. So can't thank them enough. That system will have a 24/7 hotline with texting and dispatch capabilities. It'll also have an online complaint form and other tools. And we'll need to develop new procedures for responding better to citizen complaints in a more timely fashion, providing verified violation data back to the public, letting them know what happened with their complaint. What was the resolution? Did we visit the site? Was there a violation? Was there not a violation, et cetera? So we want to make this data more forward facing and more transparent for the public. And we think that system will help get us there. So we're already moving on that one. The 5th is to enhance illegal rental enforcement. This one's absolutely critical. And if you read the public comment document, there were many comments on this, many. This is pretty low hanging fruit. Excuse me. We can use Rentalscape to find these rentals as they scrub the internet constantly. And we have been working on this. We are finding illegal rentals, but we need to do a better job and we need to pick up the pace on it and really find all of them. And I think our code enforcement staff here is committed to doing that. We don't need ordinance amendments to do that, and we can work on that immediately if the board agrees that's a priority. The last is to strengthen compliance standards in the VHR ordinance. Staff agrees with this recommendation and recommends the board direct us to strengthen standards in the ordinance. These are things like looking at fire safety, to prohibit outdoor, wood burning fires for safety. Maybe changing occupancy. There was a recommendation to eliminate the +2 when calculating occupancy. We do allow 2 per bedroom, 2 per legal bedroom, and we also allow 2 more right now. And then children under 5 are exempt. The committee's recommendation was to get rid of the +2 when calculating occupancy. So staff is curious what the board thinks about that. We want to tighten our parking standards, noise standards, and we definitely need to revise our sign standards, among other things. There was a long list in this section. This is where the devil's in the details, and staff asks, again, the board allow us some flexibility to make those changes and redline the ordinance. When we come back with that first reading, the board will have all the opportunity to give us the thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways, and tell us to go back and redo it, or you love it or not. So a lot of detail there, and I think we can work through that. One recommendation staff is not ready to move forward on is a request to establish a VHR commission. At this time, since we have limited resources, we're asking that the board allow us to direct all of our resources towards enhancing the program and working on enforcement. It would take resources to manage a commission. There's just no question. And since resources are tight, we think we can use them in a better way right now and check in. If there's still a need in the future to do that, absolutely, we can take a look at that. I mentioned Appendix A earlier, but I just want to expand on that a little bit. That was Appendix A to the Advisory Committee's report. Those were items where they did not reach consensus. And as you can see, there weren't many. I mean, it's pretty notable how many things they reached consensus on. Shocking. The primary one was on preferences for strategies to address impacts from VHR clusters and within what timeline. So we had some committee members wanting to break up clusters more actively. And we had some wanting to break them up like we're doing now through attrition, where if a property sells, the VHR permit does not transfer with the owner, that permit dies. And then we have our buffers around legally existing VHRs. And honestly, if you look at the buffer map, which is on our website, there aren't many holes in it in Tahoe anymore. So that's where folks go on the waiting list. They also debated hosted rental standards and then generally had kind of a debate on the values, interests, and perspectives on VHRs. So there was a little description from the consultant on that. But we agree the clustering issue is really it's a tough one. We didn't have enough time to work out those details, and I'd be curious if the board has direction on that. If not, maybe there's room in the future for a working group to continue to work on looking at clusters and how we break those up. So we're certainly open to that. Lastly, we did hold a public meeting in March 2024 to review the committee's recommendations report and receive feedback from the public. We held it here in Tahoe. We created a 3-question survey that was available by QR code and on the website. We received approximately 200 responses, which is incredible. The summary of those responses and all the raw data responses from that survey were attached to this item to give the board additional information on how the public feels about this committee's report. And honestly, there were many comments on enforcement and comments that were going in the right direction and that we need to tighten things up for all sides. I think, good operators want better enforcement. Management companies want better enforcement. People that get woken up at 2 a.m. next to a VHR want better enforcement. So it's pretty universal. There were also comments that were all over the board. I mean, it would take me the rest of today to summarize them all. So hopefully the board found that useful. I sure did when reading through them. Okay, I'm going to try to get out of your way and let you talk. So that concludes my presentation. I'd really like to thank you for your time. I am, of course, available for questions, but I'd like to hear the board discussion and direction. Like I said, we plan to come back based on what you recommend today with a first reading of an amended VHR ordinance sometime this summer.
Thank you, Brendan. I appreciate that. And before we get into the board discussion, I want to turn this over to Supervisor Lane. But before I do that, Supervisor Lane, I want to commend you on this process. As I dug into this, I think you've emerged on a really productive model to tackle challenging issues within a community. And I think your process has been spot on here. Really appreciate all of those who took part in this process. Your recommendations and your comments were just so helpful in helping us understand what you're dealing with in the Tahoe Basin, recognizing that the issues here on the East Slope are different than the issues that we are finding on the West Slope. And so, thank you for helping us work through this. And I just found this just really well done. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to you for comments.
Well, that's, really something coming from you, and I thank you for that. I was hopeful that in doing this process kind of the Tahoe way, this is how we operate pretty much in the basin. When we have disagreements, we get all the parties together and we sit down and we try to hash them out. And nobody gets everything, but everybody can live with whatever we come up with. So this is kind of how we do business. And I'm really taken that you noticed the process, because there are polarizing issues down on the West Slope. I've seen them, what they are better than I do. I try to understand them, but these are ways of bringing people together, and not in a all, winner takes all kind of way. And so that's a really good segment to kind of some context that I wanted to put on this. And that is first and foremost, a big thank you to Planning and Building, in particular, the Director of Planning and Building, Ms. Gardner, and then our Deputy Director, Mr. Ferry, and his staff. We couldn't have done this without you. Thank you for trusting some of the requests that I made early on, not knowing what this process was really going to flesh out to look like, but having consultants in the room helping this dynamic advisory committee that we put together kind of stay on track, because it's really easy to go sideways. So Zephyr Collaboration, a big shout out to you, but the biggest shout out is to the advisory committee members. They represented all sides of this issue. Some are vehemently against vacation home rentals. They're tired of hearing the county say we're going to do something. It's been 24 years, 22 years since the inception of a VHR ordinance. It kind of went silent for about 15 years. And then the board became very active the last 7 or 8 years in making some changes that were helpful, but it was kind of, from the perspective of the basin folks, a little too late. And it's still not working. It's still broken. So having this advisory group come together, there were people who own vacation homes that were on this group. There were people that are surrounded by vacation homes and that clustering issue. There were owners of management companies in the room. So really, I expect that some of what you're going to hear today, when we go into open forum or public forum on this, will be some of those polarizing concepts. I'm tired of waiting for help, or hey, back off. You're coming on a little too strong, too much governance. We might hear all of that. But what I want you to know is that that's exactly what the advisory committee went through. They have spent hundreds of hours working on the suggestions that are before us. And I strongly support that final report that group came up with. It might not be doable to do it all. As Mr. Ferry said, let's give a little trust in the staff. Let's let them look at it and come up with, what do we think is doable? What maybe can't we do today, but we will take as a strong recommendation for the future. So just remember, when you hear and when you read the public comments, that is a good buffet of what we went through as an advisory committee. And even though I sat through all the meetings, I did not participate. I simply listened and was tried to be a foundation for them, that they felt safe to have some of these really hard discussions, which they did. And I'm very proud of them, and I'm proud of the report that they've come up with. And it's still the beginning of the process. We're a long ways from there, but we're at an important juncture. And I hope that you will give the support to staff going forward to continue to build off of this good work. And with that, I will want to hear all of your thoughts and comments and questions.
Was a
In
perfect
addition to the
lead-in.
public.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. At this point, do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments at this point before we go to public?
Yeah, I
comment?
just want to say, Brooke, thank you, especially forming that committee. It's a great thing because I have a lot of family members that live up here and there's been issues and stuff, especially when they go out to dinner, come home and they find these people.
How many are you related to? Let's just get that out of the
Yeah,
way.
exactly. A lot. Can't help that. But anyway, but a lot of it, they go to dinner and come back and then they find these people park in their driveway and they can't even get into their garage because they're accessing this, PHR, this house next door. And a lot of the noise and the garbage and all the other issues and stuff like that. It's been a lot of complaints that I've had. And I appreciate what you've done and especially forming this committee so we can resolve these problems. So thank you. Kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I also want to acknowledge all the work that's gone on in terms of getting to this point. This is an example of the community-based problem resolution approach, right? And I've always been strongly supportive of that because the people who live in the area know the impacts. And whether that's development in El Dorado Hills or VHRs in Tahoe, the people closest to knowing what happens on a day-by-day basis are the ones that should have the strongest voice in helping with recommendations. So kudos to all the effort that went into this. I think we've arrived at a great place. The one thing I do want to acknowledge is our treasurer tax collector and her engagement in this, because when I first got on the board, we had a very poorly managed process and we weren't tracking where vacation home rental taxes, the TOT tax should be coming from. With the newly elected treasurer tax collector, all of those things changed. It wasn't a role she wanted necessarily, but the board had decided that was the best place because of collecting taxes and TOT is a form of tax. But kudos to Karen for all of her work and getting us to this point. We've implemented a lot of changes in terms of the ability to track some of the things through Airbnb. Not perfect, but it was a good start and it moved us in the right direction. And I look at this as the next step. How do we then take it to the next level? And it's always been something I think most of us would recognize that enforcement's got to be number one in these things. It doesn't do any good if you've got regulations, ordinances, and nobody's there to enforce it. So I think the decision the board made to add the additional staffing in code enforcement, particularly in the Tahoe Basin, that dedicated team looking at these things is really going to start turning a lot of what historically has happened into a more managed and controlled environment. And that's what we're all after, right? People have the right to quality of life where they live and they shouldn't be hugely impacted by a lot of traffic coming into their transients, right? So, but there's also a need for recreation in areas that are as beautiful as Tahoe. So I want to preserve the VHR capabilities in the unincorporated area, but we have to do it with the proper enforcement and looking at what the future may bring, right? And so there's a lot of things there. But I do have some specific comments on the 6 items presented, but I'm gonna wait till after public hearing, after we have the public's input, public comment to go ahead and comment on those further.
Great, excellent. I'm going to do the same thing. Any further comments, Supervisor Harlan? All right, let's go. And we'd love to hear what you have to say. So Kim, can you please open public comment on this item?
Now taking public comment on item number 20. Individuals will have 3 minutes to address the board. The timer will notify when your time is up. Public comment will be taken first from those participating in the boardroom and then from those participating through Zoom. For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. If you're joining the meeting by phone, press *9 to indicate a desire to comment. If you're joining by Zoom, press the raise hand button. Please voluntarily state your name for the record.
Who would like to speak on this item? Come on down. Just you go ahead and approach the podium. And if you'd like to line up behind them, that's perfect. Welcome.
Good morning and thank you for having me. My name is Tad Dodson. I'm a full-time ski instructor at Heavenly. I served on the committee and attended every meeting in person and every preparatory meeting. So I urge the board to adopt most of the committee's recommendations. There are some things I think the board should keep in mind. A tiny minority of residents, your constituents, make a living from or profit from VHRs. Very small amount. Those who financially benefit but are not your constituents label themselves stakeholders. Some stakeholders use VHRs to live beyond their means. They can't afford a second home in Tahoe without VHR income. Regardless of their original intentions, they quickly become addicted to the income. Soon, the principal reason for single-family homes is investment return, not housing. They shamelessly assert that those living around their investment should embrace the stranger conveyor next door, as if their right to monetize R1 zoned housing trumps everyone else's right to quiet enjoyment, a desire for community, and even R1 restrictions of rentals shorter than 30 days. Our community has neither a moral obligation nor a legal obligation to guarantee their investment returns. These stakeholders never stop protecting their wallets. They make all the time in the world to attend meetings, write letters, join committees, donate to candidates through their trade groups. And because this is what they do for a living, they raise a disproportionately loud voice. In contrast, all residents are your constituents. The vast majority of us have jobs that do not depend on VHRs. Even if we serve the tourist community, there are more non-VHR lodging options than we have amenity space for tourists to enjoy. Don't believe Tahoe is oversubscribed? Let's chat about it in the line for Sky Express on any winter Saturday. The locals will know what I'm talking about. Because VHRs are not our jobs, we do not have time to match the hue and cry of the pro-VHR stakeholders. But make no mistake, the rest of us are completely fed up with for-profit mini hotels in our neighborhoods. So what should the board do? The board should scale up enforcement to the level required to implement the recommendations of the committee that regulate the gray market, right? Enforcement is key. I don't argue that. Then you must, and most importantly, begin a process to sunset these permits. Do it in spite of the cacophony of stakeholders screaming, "Don't hurt my wallet," because that's what they care about. And do it before the silent majority meets you at the ballot box with an El Dorado County Measure T. Anyway, thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate the opportunity to have been of service.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your service. And we're all getting used to a new system up here in the boardroom. In the West Slope, we have a marker at 30 seconds and then 3 minutes. So it's just the 3-minute warning. And we do hold 3 minutes so everyone can speak and participate. Oh, well, okay, great. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you for your comments. Welcome. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. My name's Karina Faley. I live in South Lake and I have a hosted VHR. So when I moved here, I came after retirement and it was my lifelong dream to live in Tahoe, right? As many of us. And this was the only way that I could actually afford to do this. I have been a very, very responsible VHR owner. I started with a whole house permit, rented it once, decided I'm never doing that again. And I bought the house intensely with the desire to alter it downstairs so that I could have a little 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit. I rent it only when I'm home. I'm an incredibly responsible renter, and I'm super concerned about the fact that we're targeting hosted rentals. I'm happy to pay a permit fee. I gave up my whole house permit. I have a VHR that's probably within 100 or 500 feet of my home. And this clustering model really makes me nervous because I think we are going to affect people like me that the county has said we did not require a permit. So I potentially have am looking at losing my income, which will force me to sell my home, shatter my dreams, and it scares the hell out of me, to be honest with you. I implore you guys to look at this carefully. I have yet to see the data, and I would like to understand from your group why you are focused on hosted rentals. I understand the problems with rentals where you have a whole house, you have no owner on site, you have management companies that are not paying a lot of attention in terms of governments. I have called myself on the rental that is diagonally behind my house when I couldn't get a hold of the owner. But when you have hosted rentals, the whole idea behind this is you're living in the home. You are there to monitor. You are there to control noise. You are there to control the parking situation. Where's the data that prompted you to focus on hosted rentals?
And if you
Was
could
it just
address the
complaints?
board, not our staff.
I'm
Yes.
sorry.
If you could address the board, not our staff.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm just confused because I've yet to see it. And I know that that came up in a lot of the comments that were directed at the, at the data or at the recommendations that got provided. And I sort of feel like we're chasing a red herring. I know there's a lot of people that are upset about rentals in Tahoe, and I understand if you're in a neighborhood and you have bad rentals around you, but let's go after the real problems. And I don't believe hosted rentals are the problems.
Thank you for your
Okay,
comments.
thanks.
Appreciate it. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Come on down. You just come on up. You don't need to raise your hand. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is John Marengo. I'm from just down the hill, in Sacramento County, Fair Oaks. We have a vacation rental. We have a coveted permit over in Nez Perce. And it's something that initially we bought years ago, thinking that when we retired, we'd like to come up here a lot. And we could only do that. Originally, it was a month to month, and that turned out to be a disaster. People love to grow pot in that area. So we had pot in every room. And then we put a lot of money into it and made it into a very cute little 1,500 square foot vacation rental. Loved the fact that we can come up here. We're usually in between guests. It's a labor of love. My shoes are all dirty. I was out raking pine needles just now. But, I appreciate the advisory committee and some of the recommendations they came up with. Some of the other ones I find to be a little bit unfair, frankly, and not addressing the problem. I agree, enforcement is key. Let's focus on the problems and those that are not following the rules. But, increasing fines on owners for things that they have little or no ultimate control over. I mean, the way it works is Airbnb puts someone in our home, or one of the other companies that do that. We read them the rules, we read them the Ryan Act. We have cameras, we have noise monitors, we have everything we can do. We've had a case where we actually had our property manager come in and evict someone because they were too loud. But yet, what I'm told is these fines are, when the example I give is, people come up here and we love some of the comments. When I was growing up, my family came up here and rented a different house every summer. That was a big treat. Love Tahoe, it's a natural treasure. And people come up, sometimes they don't realize when they're talking, their voice carries. So after 10 o'clock, unlike if you're a resident, if you're out talking on your front deck after 10 o'clock, it's not a crime. But what we were told by El Dorado County Sheriff, when they came out, from a call, if they could hear a person's voice from the street talking after 10 o'clock, it was a strike and a fine for them. It's fine for us and a strike on us. And there's only so much we can do. We can't control every situation. So I was talking to Brendan about this a while back. You can find me and find me more and find me more, but I can only do so much. I can't control every situation. I don't think our little vacation home is a model. Love our neighborhood, love our neighbors. Some don't want. Is that the 30 second?
It is. No, that's your time's up. Yeah.
Okay. So I just
thank you for your
encourage you to
comments.
look at it. I mean, you have to be fair, and there's only put the onus on those responsible, not those who have done everything right. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your comments. Good morning. Welcome.
Hi, Linda Witters. I had some questions. When you talk about 3 new employees, are you talking about county employees or employees that are paid with the 30% of the VHR, the TOT that's collected? Is it paid for by the industry, or are we funding a new police force for a private industry?
Exactly. We will just ask your questions at the end of public comments. We'll get.
I'm sorry that
answers.
that's not been made clear through.
Okay.
And another thing that's not been made clear, that the meetings weren't noticed properly for these. I don't have a VHR next to me. I'm not bothered by them. I've never called to complain about them. But you can't deny the fact that they have an effect on our community. And I think about the roads. We have half of all the failed roads in El Dorado County are in this district. And we have four times the amount of vacation home rentals in this district, in just the basin portion of the district, that the entire rest of the county has. So I don't go along with the fact that we, the public, the taxpayers should pay for any additional police force for any private industry, because this would set a precedent. So who do we give another police force to? And isn't it true that over half of our general fund monies go to the El Dorado County Sheriff's Department? Isn't that true? I believe it's 54%. And we can't police these issues without hiring new people? I don't buy it. I think you haven't made the case. I think you need to think about why the general public owes a private industry a police force. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Okay.
Good morning,
Good
Board
morning.
of Supervisors. His name is Steve Knowles. I'm live up 1520 Plateau Circle. I got to just say I have to head out to work. Thank you for the report. Very nicely done, committee. Obviously, one of the speaker committees got up. You can see why there was a bias, or well biased on all sides. So I've had a vacation rental now for 7 years with the county. I've had one complaint. That complaint came from my neighbor behind me who moved in a vacant house. She called me. I called the renters, done. That's all it took. I think there's this issue about how we, as are living in this community, can't call our neighbors and say, hey, Steve, I got an issue. Okay, I'll take care of it. Why do we have to have 3 enforcers? Why do we have to call the cops? What do we have to get fined? Let's start with the basics. If Tim has an issue with me renting, he should call me. I shouldn't have a complaint and get $1,000 fee. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense at all. So let's talk about what I do. I have my house. I live 250 days, 220 days out of the year, 30 at most. I rent it maybe 50 days. Weekends, people want to come up. You know what? I go on a vacation. I'm glad this gentleman has a deep pocket, because this thing is paying for my $20,000 roof I have to repair next year, or some other things. So it's not like I'm putting in my pocket. I'm doing deferred maintenance. I'm upgrading my house. What's wrong with that? Making a little bit of money. Who stays in my house? Families, couples. They come with their kids. They come with their grandparents. Those 10 people or 8 people occupancy of 4 bedrooms is ridiculous. That gets eaten up really fast. It has capacity to sleep 20 if you want. But what I have now with the county is 10 my limit. 10 is it. So why move it to 8? Why drop it? Is that an issue? I don't understand it. Again, the people that come here are well understood. They well respected. I have got a laundry list of things you can and cannot do. And I've submitted that to the county as part of my website. The county doesn't say, oh, we don't regulate that. I'm going, well, then why don't you? Why aren't you guys posting these as a general thing? Because now you're putting back on us. And at the same time, we're getting called and complaints because things are happening. I think it's just trying to put too much on this issue way too soon. All right, noise decibels in my house. Why would anyone next to me care what's going on in the house if they can't hear it outside the house? Are you guys protecting the hearing of the people that run the house? It makes no sense. So I have no idea what that came from, what that means. If it's outside, I get it, but an inside noise monitoring system to track decibels, come on. And then I have to report it quarterly. Let's get a little bit clear on some of these things. So fortunately, I have a lot of notes, don't have enough time, so I'll summarize them and send them off. I look forward to the next meetings. Brooke, you've done a great job. And I think the fact that this has time to kind of nurture and get to next forward, let's just not make some immediate things too soon, because I don't think people understand what the tax TOT money comes, which, by the way, I've been paying since day one. It gets, the day someone leaves, the money goes to the county. So I think you ought to rethink some of the things you have on this list. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. First, thank you, Supervisor Lane, for putting this all together. I appreciate it. And thanks for coming up to the lake.
Our pleasure.
I'm Tim Coolbaugh. I was on the committee. I'd like to point out a few things. The recommendations in this report are derived from a wide set of viewpoints in the advisory committee, pro and anti-VHR alike. And all of these recommendations are the result of 100% consensus. We all agreed. What we disagree on is how to implement the anti-clustering 500-foot rule. Those that disagree on any reduction or thinning have one thing in common. They all profit from the unwieldy amount of VHRs in our neighborhoods. Please see the back pages of the report. There's photos of 30 home clusters right here. This shows the clusters of up to 30 VHRs existing in our neighborhoods. This needs to be dealt with. So I urge that these recommendations move forward, but also want to remind you that there is more work to be done in order to restore our neighborhoods. Reduction of the clusters is mandatory. A solution to clustering shows the county is serious about the needs of the residents and perhaps will stem the loss of confidence in government to solve the problem before it gets to the point of a ballot measure. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and your work on the committee. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? All right, oh, come on down. Then we'll move to public comment online. So, good morning, welcome.
Good morning. My name is Jody Pratt. I was on the committee. I wanted to address the gal who got up and spoke about hosted rentals. I live next to a hosted rental, no problem at all. Most everybody on the committee had no problem with hosted rentals. The problem we had, just to highlight it, is people who claim to be a hosted rental, but they're not.
Right.
They leave, they're not there watching their home, and they rent it out. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that that's the issue that was brought to our attention as we worked through things. And again, to underscore what Tim said, these are items, what's been presented to you in the report are items that were agreed on 100%. There were things we didn't agree on. There was a lot of robust discussion among all of us. A lot of us, would like to see no VHRs, but I've been persuaded, I started out there, but I've been persuaded that that's not really going to help anything because then it all goes underground and we have no regulation. So I get that there needs to be VHRs, but there needs to be a little bit more handle on it. For those folks who are saying, I own a VHR and I've never had any problems or complaints, that's awesome. This isn't going to really affect you that much because you already have a great VHR. This is really targeting more the VHRs that are not in compliance, the VHRs that are owned by people who don't live here, and you have no idea where those people are. We have some VHRs in my neighborhood, the Golden Bear neighborhood, that are owned by people who live in other states, and they could care less what happens in our neighborhood. So this is really targeting the bad VHRs, although certainly there will be some spillover to the good VHRs that are totally in compliance with everything. The other thing I would just point out from a legal standpoint, you can't really have regulations that only target bad VHRs. In other words, you have to have equal protection for everybody. You have to have regulations that are in effect for everybody from a legal standpoint. So, these are regulations, the things that we've proposed are things that can apply to everybody and every VHR. And if you're a good VHR, you have nothing to worry about. So that's the standpoint that we all came to it from. I would also just like to add that besides the meetings that we had all together, we had 4 or 5 subcommittees that met at least 2 or 3 times a week. On top of that, I was personally on 3 subcommittees and we met twice a week, each of those subcommittees. There are a lot of hours that went into this and a lot of thought by a lot of people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And thank you for all your work on the committee. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, my name is Sharon Kerrigan. I am representing the South Tahoe Association of Realtors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. We wanted to share that the association supports reasonable increases to restrictions of the vacation rentals in the unincorporated areas. to ensure that neighbors of vacation rentals' rights to quiet enjoyment are protected. We believe that a decrease in the cap of allowed vacation rentals isn't really necessary. With the 500-foot anti-clustering rule, you're starting to see attrition. No new permits have been able to be issued. So we urge the county to allow this anti-clustering rule to really work and then revisit that in the future to ensure that that's having the intended effect. We also believe that requiring all of the permitted VHRs to have the exterior noise monitors and cameras installed is excessive. We recommend instead that you consider only requiring it after a violation for maybe a first strike, and then that's something that they have to do. And while we've always been in favor of preserving a property owner's rights to be able to short-term rent, we also have really always continually advocated for robust enforcement. And we really respect the compromises that were reached by this committee and the resulting recommendations to help balance those needs. And we're encouraged to see that the county plans to make enforcement so much more robust, hiring new staff. I'm so thrilled to see this, the new program that will hopefully be more effective. And we really believe that this is the key to finding balance and to making this a successful program. The county, as you all know, does benefit from the TOT that's collected. And so it's my understanding Brooklyn has really highlighted the benefits of the TOT coming back to the basin areas, the unincorporated areas of the basin, so that we're getting those benefits for plowing and roads and fire protection. And I'm sure she can highlight that further for all of us. And I just want to thank all of the members of the committee. I know we've got some realtors that are on there that are on both sides of this issue. So we also we work in this community, but we live here too. And there are some that are like, I really need that quiet enjoyment, while others are like, I really want that right to be able to do what I want with my property. So we really respect all the work that has been put into coming to this compromise. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments and your work on this issue. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Stuart Roberson, local resident and co-founder with my wife of R&R Vacation Rentals. We represent close to 40 homeowners that have vacation rentals. We also represent the neighbors next to each one of them. I'd like to support some of the comments that have already been made. I'm really pleased at how the committee was able to work together regardless of the starting opinions that we had, and to craft really thoughtful recommendation. Also, without transparent reporting, penalties, and enforcement, we'll never know where we stand. We never will know how we are doing, which is part of what brought us to this point. So thank you for the action that's already being taken by the enforcement group. Please prioritize establishing a system for public reporting, prompt response by an enforcement team, and transparent reporting of complaints that results in consequences of those complaints. It's urgently needed. And again, I'm glad to see it being put in place. With the system in place, we're going to have the necessary data to actually decide what should we do in the future. We need to get that data. Our committee overcame a lack of data. We did that with trust and empathy. We didn't always agree. We left the meetings sometimes very unfulfilled, but we always came back and we respected each other and came up with a recommendation. I believe in my heart, and I know from experience, you can have a good vacation rental. We don't get complaints from the 40 homes that we manage. Some of the recommendations in here, we're already doing, and that prevents the complaints. To further the public knowledge, I'd ask you to produce an analysis of the TOT collected, as people are asking for. How much has been raised annually over the last 3 years? What are the projections? How much of those funds have actually been allocated to the basin? And I know more is coming to the basin, which thank you so much. But I think everyone that lives here needs to know that the TOT is paying for these things and what extra they're paying for. Also, I think we need to look at new information. I'd love to see an economic study done that not only is looking at VHRs, but looks at the single day visitor. TARPA released a report The day visitors account for 44% of all vehicle traffic. Overnight visitors account for 9%. That's for hotels, PHRs, everything. So that kind of data is really informative. The public feedback for today's recommendation is illustrative of how difficult it is to craft an ordinance that addresses the needs of all the constituents. Regardless of what changes are approved or bypassed or modified,
Thank you.
please authorize a VHR commission for future decisions.
Thank you so much for your comments. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else before we move to our online participants? Good morning, welcome.
Good morning. My name is Roxanne Bruce. I've lived here for 38 years. I've seen a drastic decline in tourism and visitors ever since all of this, what I am going to call the most punitive measures and restrictions and penalties to punish visitors for coming here. Most of this is based on the model of bad apple. So because we have some bad apples, maybe some really bad ones, we're going to make sure that we make it miserable for everyone who comes. I think the surveillance and monitoring that people have to put up with, I wouldn't want to be put on blast. If I go to Hawaii or Mexico or Puerto Rico, I don't have to put up with any of this. It's a real vacation. I don't have restrictions. I don't have all this monitoring and surveillance. I mean, it's invasive. It's invasive to people's privacy. And because they have all these restrictions and rules, they're not coming back. And because I run a business, I get to hear from all the different people who come up here and tell me what their experience was like in the VHRs they came to. They tell me how miserable what they have to put up with is and that they will not be coming back. I don't know if anyone here recalls back New Year's celebrations. The streets were so populated that we had to shut down state line so that we could accommodate all the visitors and tourism. Now you've got paid parking and no one even shows up. Our last St. Patrick's Day, we had hardly no visitors. We don't have hardly any visitors. The restaurants tell you that they don't have hardly any business anymore. Basically, we are choking out our entire tourism and visitor industry because we make their experience so miserable, so restrictive, so punitive that they do not want to come back and be surveyed and monitored and treated like they got slapped in the face for coming here. No one likes it that comes here. I hear the complaints constantly, and I also see the results in my town after 38 years. This is probably the worst year I have ever seen for visitors and tourism. It's down, down, down. And we're going to kick the barrel all the way out the door for those that barrel bad apples. We're just going to kick it completely out and you won't have any apples at all and you won't have tourism. And I just want all you guys to know who's going to be paying for our lack of income, which was always tourism and visitors. It's going to be you people. It's going to be all you people who live here. They're going to tax you out of Tahoe and you're going to be paying for all this with your taxes because you chase the tourists out by slapping them in the face for coming. I have a whole different perspective on this. I don't think we care at all about our visitors and we do not welcome them whatsoever. So bad mistake. I don't think we're helping.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Good morning, welcome.
I'm Teresa Piper and I represent the West Slope. I was part of the committee. So the rest of the board, you guys are saying, oh, Tahoe, oh, Brook, it's coming. It's already in our area. That's why I got part of the committee. Just FYI, Braden already pointed out, we're squeezing the hosteds are more down in our area than up here. I have them all in my neighborhood in Gold Ridge in Pollock Plains. So pay attention, you guys. It's coming our way too. Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, thank you all. Oh, okay, great. Come on down. Good morning, welcome.
Morning. Thank you for having me and for making the trip up here. My name is Caleb Fry. I am a 18-year professional VHR manager here in South Tahoe. I employ about 45 people that work in this field. Major appreciation to you, Supervisor Lane, for establishing this committee. I thought it was a wonderful opportunity to have everyone together and have intelligible conversation about this challenging problem. The industry is obviously disruptive and difficult for policy holders or excuse me, policymakers to enforce. I generally support all the recommendations. Some things I might feel could have been handled better in this process, but really, as many of my colleagues said, I think what we did was great. It was kind of a check and balance process, people working together, listening to each other, empathizing with each other. It was awesome. And a couple things that I would like to see or recommend, however, I feel there should be, I'd like to see the county really assess the VHR problem. Not just take some very passionate voices for their word. You know, there's several who think they should all be banned. There's several who believe they should be unregulated. I'd like to see the county really set out to assess the topic themselves, really survey residents, meet with people, understand how disruptive is it living next to a rental? What's it like? What do you like? What do you not like? How do VHRs impact your job, your livelihood? If you just listen to some passionate people like myself, you're not going to get the full story. So I implore the county to commit to that process, particularly before taking aggressive action. I think this dedicated enforcement unit and just kind of a VHR unit in general is paramount. How can such a complex program be managed well if there is not a dedicated team with oversight? Up till now, I think there was one part-time enforcement person dedicated to this complex challenge. Along or in parallel with that enforcement unit is collecting data. Data should be driving decisions. And I think that's probably how we can figure out how best to manage the issue. I think eliminating clusters in an arbitrary capacity does not bring resolution. That could eliminate all the good actors and leave a bad actor right next to you. So focus on bad actors, focus on enforcement, support those of us who are doing this well and doing it the right way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. All right. Seeing no other participants, we thank you all for your comments in the boardroom. Really appreciate your perspectives. And Kim, let's go online.
Not taking public comment from online participants. Not taking public comment from DDS.
Good morning.
Hello, this is David Diaz. I live in Tahoe Paradise area. Can you guys hear me?
We sure can. Thank you.
Thank you. The issue is I hear people saying that we don't have, or they say that houses that don't have complaints. Well, there's a house right next to me that had 7 complaint calls and never one that was actually put down as an official complaint. We have 8 rentals within 500 feet of our house. In the summertime, it's every week, all day long, that noise is made. When people say that there's nobody coming up here, well, they're sure coming to my neighborhood and visiting. I don't mind a vacation rental that does what they're supposed to do. What I mind is the people that are just making the noise. We've had to pick up diapers off our driveway. My driveway's been blocked for 2 hours in the wintertime where I can't get out. I happen to have leukemia and I'm under treatment for that. I have to go get my blood tested quite often, and I have my driveway blocked for 2 hours. It's all vacation rentals, not people that live up here. And so when people tell me that it's not a problem or there's only a few bad actors, come to my neighborhood and spend the time, summertime here and in the wintertime, and tell me that there's only a few bad actors. This has got out of hand. I appreciate Brook Lane and the rest of you guys for bringing this forward. And I think this whole thing needs to be put into the code and go from there, maybe adjust it later. And my opinion is too, that you're probably not going to have enough enforcement officers to enforce it throughout here. And when it comes to the whole limit of vacation rentals, I don't think there needs to be a limit if you can actually enforce everything in the code correctly. I'm not against vacation rentals. What I'm against is the noise and the disturbance that we have as residents. And that's pretty much all I have to say right now, but thank you so much.
Thanks for your comments. Appreciate it.
Now taking public comment from Chris Lindquist.
Good morning.
Hi, thank you. I live in the Bay Area and I have a VHR in Pollock Pines, and I target off-roaders, like people who come up to drive the Rubicon Trail or ride their dual sport bikes, something that I enjoy doing, and the reason for buying my home in the first place. My property is on several acres. I spend 3 to 5 days a month there in Pollock Pines. I keep prices high enough that it only rents a few times a month. All of my Pollock Pines neighbors know me. We have dinner and wine when I come up, and they all help look out for my home. I give gift certificates to local restaurants to my residents to help make sure my guests are supporting the local economy. I've had a property for 5 years with 0 complaints. So I'm here to represent the spillover, especially for those of us on the western slope. I think the maximum occupancy changes are an overreach. The elimination of the +2 calculation reduces flexibility without a clear justification. My property, for example, has 3 bedrooms plus a large bonus room, perfectly accommodating larger family groups while still adhering to noise, fire, and parking regulations. The communal aspect of VHRs, where families can stay together, is a significant advantage over traditional hotel accommodations and should not be undermined without compelling reasons. Implementation of noise monitors for properties like mine, which is situated on several acres without close neighbors, seems excessive. The absence of clear noise thresholds further complicates this requirement. Indoor noise regulation in particular feels invasive, especially when a property's secluded nature already mitigates the potential for noise disturbance. My property's at a lower elevation with less frequent snowfall. The committee recommended a snow removal contract being mandatory. This is both impractical and economically unsound for properties like mine. A more nuanced approach, considering geographical and elevation differences, would be more appropriate. Additionally, you could specify the regulation should simply state that a home must be made accessible as practically possible during periods of snow, rather than requiring a contract. Outside of these issues, I do support the increased enforcement of points 1 through 5. These are just my comments on point number 6. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your comments.
There's no additional public comment.
All right. Well, thank you all for helping us understand the complexities and nuances of this issue, and so appreciate everyone's productive wrestling with this issue. So I'll bring this back to my colleagues for additional comments. I do want to get an answer. There was a question on the 3 new employees and how are those being funded, and maybe perhaps some brief clarity on the difference between El Dorado County Sheriff's officers and code enforcement officers. What's the difference between those and helping manage this issue?
Sure. First, I would like to clarify, there was a question about what proportion of the general fund supports the sheriff's office. So while the sheriff's office is supported by about 50% general fund, it only makes up about 15% of the total general fund. So the sheriff's net county cost is about 71 million. The general fund budget is 455 million. So just wanted to clarify that statement. The code enforcement division is under the planning and building department. So they are non-sworn and they are completely separate from the sheriff's office.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much for that. All right.
Well, the revenue, the revenue that's being used to pay for the salaries and the benefits of the new code enforcement officers, though, is coming from TOT. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I just want to make sure it's tied to TOT, which is what's generating the funds.
Exactly. All right. Thank you for that. All right, we have about 15 minutes before our next 11:30 time allocation. And once again, I'm getting to comments, but the direction, just for our clarity, will be to weigh in on some of these issues that staff had questions on, whether it's clustering, whether it's the +2 issue. And the direction is to come back with an ordinance amendment. We are not making any final decisions today, so just wanted to clarify that. So Supervisor
We
Parlin.
need to provide direction though
do, and
for
so-
staff to go do their.
Right, so what is our direction to staff today? Also hosted rentals. I know that was an issue.
Correct.
Supervisor
Okay.
Parlin.
Oh, you want me to go ahead and get started on it? So I'm looking at the slide that had the 6 items. I think that's kind of
Yep, that's a
what
summary.
we're being asked to look at.
Would that be possible to bring up? Is that difficult? That might be helpful for our discussion.
Slide 5.
Thank you.
And I don't know why I'm
Page
hoarse
5 of the
today. Sorry.
presentation, yeah.
Yeah. I agree with the statement about at this point, honestly, with the clustering in place, and we've been working with that, it seems like the cap is kind of almost moot, quite honestly. So I'm not sure if we need to reduce it because it would be a false cap, whereas the clustering is the anti-clustering is doing all the work. So I don't know if it actually makes more sense to get rid of it and just enforce the anti-clustering, but I'm concerned about reducing it down to perhaps 600. That's just false. And we don't have a mechanism to get there yet, but I know we want to. And I know the staff report said that ultimately someday, when the 500-foot anti-clustering actually is fully implemented, we'll be down around 600. So not sure what to do with that. The hosted rentals, these are the most troubling of all. And I appreciate the person that is an awesome hosted rental host. But the problem is that I've learned from being on the board is when you don't have really clear policies that are enforceable, you have mud. And that's a loophole. And unfortunately, people take advantage of that. So, and actually, this is where I was going to put Linda Jorgensen, I think, on the spot if we could, to explain, because I have, and I'm putting up my air quote fingers, I have a hosted rental in my district, which is the north part of the county. And I actually have 2. And they're calling themselves hosted. They are not. But how do we prove it? And so what I need from Linda is, is there a way to prove beyond a doubt that something's hosted or not? How do we do that? Because this is my angst with hosted 100%.
Thank you, everybody. Linda Jorgensen, Code Enforcement Supervisor. Yes, hosted rentals are an issue, and staff has recognized that for quite a while. Prior to the organization of the committee, and I do want to thank you, Supervisor Lane, and everybody else involved. This has just been tremendous effort, and we're really looking forward to having some changes. But with hosted rentals, trying to prove that they're not a hosted rental is very difficult. We are getting some of the properties where the homeowner's exemption that they claim as a primary residence is showing up when we seem to have documentation that they're not living there. However, to prove that they're not living there, if they're getting any kind of mail there, and if they're getting the homeowner's exemption, and they're stating that they're living there, to try to have proof is difficult. That's one of the reasons why we're hoping to have some real solid changes in that. About the only thing we can do is show up when they are rented. But again, they just has to say that that if the renter is there and says, yes, the homeowner is just out doing some shopping or they're on a medical appointment, if we do show up, it's kind of difficult. So I'm sure there's probably some more specific questions in regards to this.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate your perspective on what the reality of the issues that you deal with. I appreciate that.
Thank
Great.
you.
All right, thank you.
So I don't know what to do with them. I just don't know what to do. And I'm concerned that for whatever reason, they're growing on the west slope when we don't have the clustering constraints on the west slope, yet the hosteds are growing faster. It makes me think that people are doing them because they're easier to do. They're cheaper. I'm very concerned about the hosteds as a whole. So I just don't know what we should do about them. And if anybody has any thoughts.
I'll jump in with you on that.
Okay.
And perhaps there's a simple solution, relatively simple, that perhaps we look at hosted rentals in the basin differently than on the West Slope, because I think the issues are different. I don't have data to prove that, and we'll definitely be relying on our staff for their experience. But I understand in the Tahoe Basin that prohibitive nature of housing, the cost of housing, and how that might be a necessity for some people in order to be able to afford to live here, to be able to rent out their home. And there's lots of, differences in that. On the West Slope, I think what we are seeing, Supervisor Parlin, in our districts, because you and I are both dealing with that,
Right.
that's not the issue, is folks buying a house and being able to afford it through a hosted rental. It comes into play with ranch marketing in our areas. So I don't know what the answer is either, but I think I would like to look at the West Slope hosted rentals differently than in the basin, because I think the issues are different, and kind of give direction to staff to bring back their recommendations based on what they're seeing on both slopes, and perhaps that's where we go with that.
And then
Might I make a quick comment on
Please.
this? I think that the advisory committee in their discussion about hosteds kind of agreed that they're some of the best run units in the best product, because the owners are on site. And to Karina's point, the way she runs her hosted is, we had a member on the committee that also runs a hosted, and they don't ever get problems. The problem is the illegal one. And for us, the biggest problem is that code enforcement doesn't respond at the time of an incident to determine whether or not the owner is there. They respond days later, weeks later, sometimes they don't respond at all. Sometimes we have found that advertisements have been proof that they're renting out the whole house. And they've unfortunately just been coached to change their advertisement in some situations. And that's not a slap against code enforcement. There's been a culture of how they've addressed things over a long period of time that I have not been a part of. I just know that we're at a point in time in which we have to change that culture so that we begin to get our hands around the illegal aspect of this program, so that it doesn't just, wreck the whole program as a whole.
So I don't know, I don't know what to do with this. And my concern is, and I'm going to say a word that nobody likes, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm wondering, can we do on the West Slope, if you want to split them out? I'm totally good with that. But can we do a moratorium on permitting more hosteds on the West Slope until we get this figured out? Because my concern is, and we saw it before when we were getting ready to make the clustering change years ago, we had a run. Measure T, we had a run. Anytime we go to make changes, we have a run. And so I don't want to encourage that either. And so I don't know, County Council, can we do something like that, or what can we
We'd obviously
do?
want to consider it further, but I think what's challenging, if you're describing and applying something to hosted, is I do not believe we currently permit hosted rentals.
don't.
So
So at all.
So how, I guess typically a moratorium would prevent the further issuance
They have
of
to get a
permits.
business license only. That's all they
Yeah,
get,
so
right?
I mean, we can certainly explore it, but I think that just the nature of that program poses some challenges.
Madam Chair, I'd like to hear from our treasurer tax collector on this item, if that's possible, because I think
sure.
she's probably closer to this than a lot of
Excellent.
us.
Sounds great.
And
Go
probably
ahead.
has a better understanding. Do we follow the path of VHRs, or is there a different approach to it that makes sense? It's not as restrictive, because I think there is, but I would want to hear Karen's comments, because she lives with it on a daily
She does.
basis.
And Karen, thank you so much for coming up to the basin to be with us today. We appreciate and welcome your insights on this.
Karen Coleman, Treasurer Tax Collector.
Can you turn your microphone on? Oh, perfect. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. Is
Perfect.
that better?
Yes, thank you.
I'm actually in favor of having the hosted rentals permitted. I don't see any problem with why we would not do that. I'm sure we would have to set up a different set of rules perhaps for those, but I think that I have sent someone out to try to verify homeownership So we do look at those who have homeowners exemptions and assume that they live there. But the ones that didn't, we did send somebody out to take a look at those. And it is very difficult. We did have him maybe check with neighbors and things like that. Some neighbors are more forthcoming than others. We found a very small percentage of people that we could not verify. And when we did that, we sent letters out to them, letting them know that their business license was in jeopardy of being revoked. Whatever became of that, I'm really not quite sure yet, but I could let everybody know once I find out. We try to give people a little bit of time to figure out what they need to do. And, you know, it's kind of, sometimes it's difficult because when you accuse people of something, it's very likely that maybe they were just out of town, or like some owners, they're there part of the year and not the other part of the year. So it's very difficult to determine. And I don't know if we could require people file for the homeowner's exemption. It's a $70 deduction on their property tax. So it's really not anything. But the law is that you can't have one in more than one jurisdiction. So there's that. As far as any other type of, I mean, so Brooke and I have had conversations about this, and I don't know what the laws around fines are, but I did a quick calculation based on TOT collections as to what an average income is for any VHR. I didn't single it out to hosted. And the average income of a VHR is about $30,000 a year. So if you only fine someone $1,000, it's really just not enough. So I think there needs to be some consideration in the amounts of the fines, because then if the hearing officer decides something different or whatever, and the person doesn't pay, we can always use other higher level collection efforts to try to get the money from folks. So, you know, I feel for, this has been going on for a long time. So I feel for all of the residents in South Lake Tahoe, those who are in favor, those who are not in favor, because it is a very difficult situation and it is growing in all of the county. I mean, we're even seeing a lot of VHRs or short-term hosted down in El Dorado Hills too. And with a lot of companies who are telling, Bay Area companies who are telling their people they have to come back to the office, we might see even more, because a lot of people moved up into the county when it was allowed for people to work from home. And now they're getting called back to work. So there's a lot of different things going on. Plus, another thing that I think I've noticed is the TOT revenue has kind of flattened out. And I think that it's a remnant of COVID. I think during COVID, a lot of people came to Tahoe. But now that travel has opened up again, you know, people are going to Hawaii and going to Europe and going to Mexico and different places where they weren't willing to travel before. But I also think it's only just a matter of time before people start coming back. You know, they're going to get their taste of what's going on out there, and then they're going to just start coming back to Tahoe, because it is, somebody called it a national treasure, and it truly is. So that's it. Questions?
Do you believe that separating the West Slope? Do you believe that separating the West Slope versus the Tahoe Basin relative to hosted rentals is a good idea? I don't see it that way. I think there's a lot of similarity, and I'd hate to separate one community unless it's absolutely necessary. And I haven't seen the data that says it is.
Yeah, and I'm not
So-
saying that I agree with that. I'm just questioning whether that is a good
Is an
idea or
option or
not.
not, yeah.
Right.
So, you know, I follow the law, and consistency for me is always easier and better if we're talking about enforcement. Because once you start treating one subset of a population different than another, I think that you could be setting yourself up for more trouble.
Right. Okay. Thank
Okay,
you for
fair
that,
enough.
Karen. All
Thank
right,
you.
Great. Really appreciate your insights. All right, like we're bumping up against 11 o'clock, but we want to
Right.
give clear direction to staff and recognize we're not going to solve everything today. And I'm finding myself in this space that all of you on the committee and in the community, along with Supervisor Lane and our staff, you have lived and breathed this issue. And, you know, we have been following it, but we don't have the depth of understanding that you do. And so I think that Brendan's recommendation to us, where we give staff leeway to bring back their recommendations, is something that I very much support. They did ask us how we feel about the +2 issue, about there was a comment that perhaps the cameras and the noise monitors might be more appropriate after a violation rather at the beginning. I found that interesting because I think we are all recognizing that we want to find the balance between the right to your own property and to benefit from it, and the right of residents to also benefit from their own property and how they want to live. So there's not going to be a one size fits all. We're not going to make everyone happy, but how do we find that balance between property rights and a resident's rights to a peaceful community and neighborhood? So that's our goal, is to find that balance along with all of you. So,
Okay.
any
I'd like
other
to give you
thoughts?
my
Yeah.
recommendations real quick on the first two.
Okay.
Reducing the cap. I think it's reasonable to reduce the cap from 900 to 800. We currently have 804 active permits in Tahoe. So let's notch it down, but let's don't go all the way to 600. Let's bring it down to a reasonable level. Because I believe that stepwise changes are probably something that are helpful to understand what the new data is. As things change, then we can change it again. But I would suggest we go from 900 to 800.
No,
We're
let's
at
stop there.
804.
Are people supportive of that generally?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, because like the clustering
Yeah.
governance, but yeah.
Right. And so for modify the hosted rental requirements, I believe we need a permitting process, but I think it's separate from VHRs. I don't think you impose the same kind of constraints on a hosted rental that you do a VHR. But we can develop that, we can implement it, we can do the enforcement on it. I think that's an opportunity to stop people who are abusing the system by calling it a hosted rental and it's really operating as a VHR. And that's what we're trying to accomplish in my mind, not harm the people who are doing it right.
Right.
But to basically assign penalties and basically eliminate those people who are gaming it. And that's what it really is. It's a gaming process. And we see it in the county in many, many different areas. It's
Right.
not just VHRs.
Right.
It's all
Nope.
over the place.
Nope.
If you can break a rule and get away with it, you probably will. And the history of code enforcement has a lot of that background to it. So those are the primary thing. A dedicated VHR enforcement unit, we've already pretty much set that up. The question is it sufficient? And I think with time we'll tell if there's enough capacity to deal with these things. But I think we're going to see a lot more conformance once we start really going out and knocking on the doors and explaining the requirements and then imposing, the fines if necessary. But I also think when we look at clustering, we should look at who are really the bad players. And if there's a provision that after you have some number of verified complaints that aren't being administered, then your permit is being withdrawn if it's in a cluster density area as a minimum, right? That's one of the ways, in addition to attrition, I think we minimize those. Get rid of the bad players, because that's what it's all about. And I think you're going to find a lot more conformance once you really start doing these things. So I'm hopeful that that will happen. And then the centrally managed complaint track, absolutely required. You got to have data. You got to know where things are. The public has to be able to go in and quickly assess who was administered some kind of a complaint. How was it registered? Where was it? Because tracking those things and getting kind of the dot matrix of where they're occurring will quickly determine if you've got an issue in a clustered area that you can go address as a special measure. And it may be knocking door to door and just getting people's inputs on things. So I think that's important. Obviously, the enhancing the illegal rental enforcement, that goes with it, and then compliance with standards. So, but that's kind of where I'm coming from at a top level.
Excellent. Any other?
Well, and then with permitting, coming up with some kind of permitted system for the hosted rentals, then will involve the clustering though.
Yes.
And so that's gonna have to be addressed at the same time.
So there's a similarity between VHRs and hosted rentals on clustering. Yes.
Brendan, have you guys talked about that already?
We have, and I don't believe, and Mr. Livingston can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we could choose to permit hosted, to a little lesser level and not make them subject to the clustering policy.
I certainly think that could be accomplished. We just have to draft the ordinance accordingly.
But would we want to do that?
and here, please hear the board that there are concerns with hosted rentals, especially on the West Slope, because I have seen nothing but challenges with hosted rentals.
Yeah.
And I am concerned about the ability to prove that. Love the concept. And if they were truly hosted rentals by people that are living there and sharing their home, that makes a lot of sense. It would cut down on problems. But the problem is people are taking advantage of them. And in the West Slope, we're seeing they turn into venue sites without having to walk through the process. So
Right.
look forward to your recommendations on this
Yeah.
issue,
But we
recognizing that it's a challenge.
recognizing that statistic gave us 2/3 of the hosted rentals are on the western slope. We definitely need to engage that part of it. Part in the discussion, that group of people, as in addition to what this advisory committee here did, to kind of blend the two and determine, are they similar enough that we can have one set of requirements, one set of permitting, or do they need to be separated? Maybe that's the ultimate use of that dialogue that has to happen.
So more to come on that issue. Yes.
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor Heidel.
And then just lastly, I just want to throw in there that, and I noticed that at your town hall last spring that I came
May.
to, it just seems for some reason that the management companies they have a good formula. And one of the management companies came up and said he's already implemented many of our recommendations. So I think that we might want to look at what they're doing, what's their golden formula that's working, and make sure we incorporate those in these strengthened standards and what you guys come up with is for what we're going to do.
Super.
That came across loud and clear at that first town hall.
Supervisor Lee, I'd like to invite you to kind of wrap this up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I did want to hear from the board, and I appreciate all the thoughtful comments you made. I appreciate the fact that you read through all this material. You made the comment that we live it, and we do. And yet it was still important that I read through all those comments because you learn from those. And so I really appreciate the effort that everybody has put into this thus far. I'm a little bit concerned about just pulling a number out of the air. We recognize that we don't have good data, but the number 600 is based on a map that we did do with the county through GIS. We said, pick a home and call it a VHR, put a 500-foot buffer around it and do that from Tahoma to the top of Echo Summit. And that's what they did. And that number 600 is closely assigned to what we would get if we had the 500-foot buffer. What I don't want to see the county do is the way we've kind of been managing the ordinance is really, let's just make it 900. It's not based on anything.
Well, it was based on something, but it was a guess.
It was, and it was a compromise between people who
right.
wanted it to be
'Cause we didn't have the
600
data.
and people who wanted it to be
Right,
1200.
right.
And you came up with the middle number, but I'm suggesting that the 600 number that's being put out there is based on something that is real. And it's a policy that the board made that had to do with the clustering, the 500-foot rule. So I would just want to say, I'm glad that staff and I had the opportunity to hear from you, and we were going to consider all that when we bring back that first reading of the ordinance. And if at that point the board does not like what's being proposed, then that would be the right time to make the changes. I'm hopeful that you will trust the process at this point and trust staff and our new staff that brings so much experience to come up with that as close to the right ingredient as we can, with the boards being able to manipulate it at the end if need be.
So I guess my question is, do you believe that we needed an ad hoc committee from the board, 2 members, yourself and someone else? Okay.
No, we did that.
Well, the hosted rental is the area I think it might apply, but whatever.
I'd like
Let's-
staff's
yeah, let's see
recommendation
what
on
it
how to
can-
handle hosted rentals, because
Okay.
that is going to be an issue. I
Yep.
agree with you,
Yep.
Supervisor Heidel. Yes, great, excellent. All right, well, Brendan,
I'm sorry, so before we go on, for clarification for myself, so would the direction would be to leave it as staff is at the 600 and then revisit going up to 800 in the future, or how did you want the direction to reflect in the minutes?
The current limit's 900.
Right, but they said, but the
And they were
staff's,
recommending 600.
yeah, staff's recommendation was to reduce the Tahoe Basin to 600. Did you want the minutes to reflect the 600 or the 800?
And I think I was trying to ask that it be left a little bit more open.
Perhaps we could
Okay.
reflect that the board had questions as to the proper cap and looks forward to staff's recommendation coming back for further discussion.
And that's why you're the chair.
You know, one of the things is we just need to leave it the way it is right now, and then we can always review it later on, and you know, 6
You
months
ain't
or a
ready.
year out. So that's what I would recommend. I mean, just leave it the way it is right now, staff recommendations.
Are you okay with that? That wording, Supervisor Heidel?
Yes, but I don't think we leave it the way it is.
No, I
think-
didn't say
I think
that.
we can decrement it down and head in the right direction, because ultimately we're going to arrive at some point, but I don't want to limit it at this point until we get more data.
That sounds good.
Because I think
All right.
this is going to be a self-correcting issue in part once we get the code enforcement in
agree.
play and things really start to happen.
I agree. So Brendan, do you have enough direction from us? I mean, we purposely didn't give strong direction because we look forward to your recommendations based on the immense work that has already been the foundation of this effort.
I think we do.
Okay.
Like I said, we could sit here and talk for days about all the specifics, which we just can't accomplish, right? So,
Right.
you know, the commit, like Supervisor Lane said, this committee was selected with varying viewpoints. They debated these issues. They have good recommendations in this report. So I'm not gonna say right now that we're gonna recommend everything in this report, because we will not. I think, as I stated, we do recommend the high level recommendations, if that makes sense. All those big, you know, modify the local contact requirements, et cetera. So we will address all of those, no question. Where we come back on the cap, you know, I'll have to do some head scratching based on the conversation that I just heard. But I certainly think we have enough to come back with a red line ordinance. We have fantastic staff that I will be working with and bouncing ideas off of, and I fully anticipate at that first reading that the board will say, nope, we don't like that part, and change this or change that, and we can, what's the saying, make the sausage there. Or you could tell me to come back for another first reading if the changes get too cumbersome and we just can't get through it at the dais.
Sounds good.
Do we have a time frame
Yeah,
on when you're
expectation.
coming
When do you
back?
think you'll be able to come back?
Well,
Yeah,
I said summer a few times. I don't, is that specific enough or?
I'll leave that up to
um,
Supervisor Lane and
Just so long as the public knows what our expectation is at some point. It doesn't have to be today,
and
but if
Supervisor
it's,
Lane
if
will,
it's
yeah,
like by
keep
the end of
everyone
July,
informed. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
summer, end of August, whatever, just something a little bit more
Yeah.
definitive than summer.
Yeah, as you know, we have pretty long lead times to get on board agendas. So
Right.
even if I start working now, I'm probably in July, knowing how busy our board calendar is.
We're gonna
too,
say it
right,
won't be
Kim?
early summer. We're gonna put it
Okay,
that way.
right, right.
Yeah,
That's
it
fair
won't be
enough.
early
That's
summer.
fair enough.
Okay.
I think
probably
July,
August,
August is fair.
August.
It's already middle of May.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Time's a ticking.
by the end of August
All
is a
right,
target.
Sounds
Yep.
good. All right, I'd like to.
Is that
So
okay?
at this point, yes.
Okay.
Supervisor Lane, well done. Brendan, thank you so much. And to all of our staff that has been involved in this, and then to the community. Thank you all for weighing in on this, participating, and we look forward to continuing conversations and collaborations as we work through this. We've made tremendous progress thanks to your efforts. We really appreciate everyone. So does anyone need a brief break before we go into our 11:30 item? Have a break? All right, let's move into our 11:30 item number 21.
Item number 21 comes from the Board of Supervisors and Planning and Building Department, Tahoe Planning, Stormwater, and Vacation Home Rental Division, hosting a board public workshop to solicit input and encourage public comments on the Tahoe El Dorado area plan.
And if we can get anyone that's moving out to have conversations outside so we can move on. Thank you all. All right. Good morning, Thea.
Hi, good morning, Board of Supervisors and members of the public. I'm Thea Graybill, Senior Planner with the Long Range
Excuse
Planning.
me, everyone. I need you to not have conversation in the boardroom. Please take your comments outside. Thank you so much. Excuse me. Okay. Excuse- all right. Okay, no. Okay, great. Thank you. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors and members of the public. I'm Thea Graybill. I am a senior planner with the Long Range Planning Division. I'm here today with Melanie Shasha, senior planner, and Brendan Ferry, who will be right back, deputy director, both with Tahoe Planning Division. Our consultant, Chelsea Payne, Director of Urban Planning with Ascent Environmental. She's joining us virtually today and able to speak if you have any questions directed at Ascent. Melanie and I are co-presenting this item, but the four of us are available to answer any questions that you might have. This workshop is on the Tahoe El Dorado Area Plan, or TED for short. Our purpose here today is just to solicit input and comment. No formal action will be taken as part of this presentation. As you know, we currently have the Myers Area Plan for the community of Myers, but there's no area plan for the entire unincorporated area of the county in the basin. The TED area plan will essentially accomplish this. It will replace the Myers area plan and cover the rest of the basin communities in the county. The TED is a long-range project. So it's a 3-year project. It's broken up into 3 different phases with possible adoption in 2026. Right now, we're just in phase 1. Which is basically community engagement, public outreach. We're just listening at this point. And we hope to wrap up phase 1 in winter 2024. Phases 1 and 2 are fully funded. A large, thanks to the Board of Supervisors for that, especially on phase 2. And phase 3 remains to be funded. Let's see if I can do all of this at once. Okay, so today during this workshop, we'll be discussing relevant background information, purpose of the TED area plan, the overall process to develop the TED, deliverables for the first phase of this effort, and then provide, of course, an opportunity for discussion and questions. Okay. So the 2004 general plan in the land use element, it directs staff to prepare an area plan in Tahoe that covers the county beyond just what is in Myers. Otherwise, the general plan is completely silent on Tahoe. The general plan defers to the Tahoe Regional Planning Agencies, or TRPA's regional plan as a long-term planning document for the county. Goal 210 directs the county to coordinate with TRPA on land use planning efforts in the basin. Policy 210.1.2 states that the county shall work with TRPA to identify lands that are capable for supporting affordable housing projects without, of course, jeopardizing their attainment of environmental thresholds, which I'll discuss further soon. Policy 210.1.3 specifically directs county staff to identify and prioritize the completion of community plans in Tahoe. Basically what we're trying to do with the TED. Implementation measure LUO, which I'm just going to quote directly because it's so in line with what we're trying to do with the TED area plan. Measure LUO specifies that the county must, 1, coordinate with TRPA and other agencies to create a comprehensive approach to land use regulation in the basin. 2, prepare and adopt a community plan for the Tahoma and Meeks Bay area. 3, identify additional affordable housing opportunities. 4, modify the county's zoning ordinance to be consistent with or adopt as county code the TRPA Code of Ordinances and Plan Area Statements. And 5, implement actions recommended in TRPA's periodic threshold evaluation. In response to the general plan, we are proposing to implement the TED area plan. Tahoe is unique, as you will definitely learn today, compared to perhaps other communities in the county on the West Slope that may also want to pursue a similar plan. Tahoe is not covered in the general plan. In fact, the general plan only points us to TRPA's regional plan. As you'll see here on this slide, It's essentially just a white hole or a white blob where the Tahoe Basin starts and ends at the lake. Also, the general plan specifically directs the county to undertake this effort.
So for clarification, the general plan was approved in 2004, and here we are 20 years later.
Correct. Well, I mean, staff did do the Myers area plan, which was
Right.
needed for that specific community. But yes, to answer your question, yes,
Okay.
we are just now getting to this. Okay. So just basically a TRPA 101 on this slide. We thought it was important to provide this context about TRPA and its authority for the purposes of this presentation. TRPA is the primary land use authority in the basin. TRPA was created by a bi-state compact between California and Nevada, which allows TRPA to oversee development here. In 1969, the US Congress ratified the compact, and that action officially created TRPA, the nation's first bi-state regional planning agency in the basin. The compact also gave TRPA the authority to adopt environmental thresholds, as I referenced previously, and to enforce ordinances designed to achieve those very thresholds. Of note, TRPA is not subject to CEQA or NEPA, but they have their own environmental analysis and review process. So oftentimes projects in Tahoe, another unique thing is they'll often be a joint or even triple document if all three are triggered. TRPA is required to establish a balance between the natural and human-made environment through its regional plan. The regional plan includes rules and standards to achieve the environmental thresholds, and TRPA implements these at a neighborhood level through plan area statements. These are just essentially mini area plans. They're like 3 pages each, based on each individual neighborhood. TRPA allows local jurisdictions, though, to create area plans, which then replace these plan area statements and local zoning. Local jurisdictions and TRPA can rely on memorandums of understanding, which allow local jurisdictions to conduct environmental review and issue permits in the basin. The county currently has an MOU with TRPA, and it does delegate some authority to county staff within the planning and building department. With the TED in place, though, TRPA will likely delegate even more authority to the county and make things much more efficient, hopefully saving residents both time and resources in the permitting process. Okay, so as I alluded to previously, there are 4 existing planning tools that guide land use goals, policies, and decisions in the basin for the county. First is, and starting on the left, is the TRPA's regional plan, which the county adopted as our approved plan. The second are the TRPA plan area statements, those like 2 or 3 page mini area plans. 3 is the Myers area plan that implements TRPA's regional plan and replaces the plan area statements and county zoning within the Myers bounds. And 4, the county zoning ordinance. Currently, Myers, again, is the only area in the county with a current area plan. For projects and land outside of Myers, we look to TRPA's regional plan, TRPA's plan area statements, and the county zoning ordinance. This can create massive inefficiencies and confusion to the public due to the need to just look at 3 different planning tools. The TED area plan will essentially replace the Myers area plan for the community of Myers, and TRPA's plan area statements for the rest of the county in the basin. And it will implement the county zoning ordinance and TRPA's regional plan.
Can I ask a quick question right here? Ms. Graybill, when you say replaces the Myers area plan, is it a better interpretation to say incorporates the Myers area plan into a bigger planning document?
Yes, that would also be accurate.
Okay.
We're basically going to take the framework of the Myers area plan, you know, the basic outline or framework, and expand it to be the entire basin. But that doesn't mean the policies and the goals and all the meat of the document will be the same. It might be different for each community, perhaps.
Great, thank you for that clarification.
Mhm. Okay. The purpose of the TED is to first ensure consistency between the county zoning and TRPA's regional plan. Right now, there are areas, and Melanie will get to this just in the next slide when I turn the presentation over to her. But right now, there are areas where those two documents conflict. And so when that occurs, development essentially stalls or halts. And it stalls or halts that potential economic development or housing projects that could occur on those parcels. Second is that it simplifies permitting and it streamlines environmental review through an updated MOU. The goal here is to establish a one-stop shop with the county at the county's front counter. Three, we would allow the county to control its own land use policies and decisions based on each individual community's needs. And four, it incorporates TRPA code and state law updates. TRPA recently through phase 2 and is in the process through phase 3, is updating its code to advance affordable housing efforts in the basin. So basically, if TRPA updates its code, we need to quickly follow suit and do the same. Other local jurisdictions in the basin have undertaken similar efforts as the TED. For example, Placer County has its Tahoe Basin Area Plan. That is for their entire portion of the county in the basin. So pretty similar to the TED. Another example is the city of South Lake Tahoe. They have their Tahoe Valley Area Plan and Tourist Core Area Plan. That's a little bit more similar to Myers and that it's more community or neighborhood based. So now I'm going to turn it over to Melanie and she will cover the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Melanie. Welcome.
Good morning, Melanie Shasha, Senior Planner, Tahoe Planning. Oops, wrong way. So this is going to be really specific. I'm going to give you a lot of detail on the TRPA's plan area statements and county zoning. I'm using Tahoma as an example today. So one of the deliverables of phase 1 is a consistency study, and that's also called a gap analysis. The study will identify inconsistencies between TRPA's plan area statements and county zoning. As Thea said, having inconsistencies creates an economic development issues. The TRPA plan area statements are based on larger areas, like we said, like mini area plans. So for Tahoma, TRPA in the mid-80s looked at this specific area and created a mini plan with zoning or like zoning with allowed uses. So this area has 2 plan area statements. There's one south of Highway 89 where most of the commercial area is in red, and it's got a bold black outline. Everything else outside of that area is a residential plan area statement, except for the green, which is all Forest Service owned land. The one thing to remember about plan area statements, because they're mini area plans, is use is allowed in, say, the residential plan area statement here are different than uses allowed in a different residential plan area statement. So for example, the residential area here allows multifamily, and in North Upper Truckee neighborhood, multifamily is not allowed. The county, on the other hand, uses a parcel-based zoning system. So for example, in this map, the yellow is residential, the commercial's in red, multi-residential is sort of in that mustardy brown color, and then recreation facilities is in blue. The county zoning designations are consistent countywide. So if you have R1 zoning, single unit residential, the allowed uses are the same no matter where you live. So where there's a discrepancy between these 2 documents, the most restrictive rule applies. For example, like I said, the plan area statement for residential for this area allows single family, ADUs, multifamily, and dormitories. The zoning allows single unit and ADUs. So what's actually going to be built out here is single unit and ADUs. No multifamily can be built, no dormitories. Additionally, the commercial areas designated by both the plan area statements and the county zoning sounds very similar, but when you look at the specific uses for each, they don't match. So for projects in Tahoe, this is really where the rubber meets the road. Projects must be consistent with both documents. I can tell you several times, especially for Tahoma, how many times I pulled out the zoning and the plan area statement and highlighted uses and then gave that to the applicant, like, good luck. Oof, I hope you find something. Specifically, when the state law changed for multifamily and commercial, I had a customer call me about parcel he owned in this area that was zoned commercial. He wanted to do multifamily, which is now allowed in state law, but the TRPA plan area statement doesn't allow it in the commercial zone. In addition to this discrepancy, there are existing developments which are non-conforming to both TRPA and the county. For example, the parcel inside the smallest circle on the Placer County line, it has a zoning ordinance designation of single family, but it's in the commercial plan area statement, but it's actually a public park. The southernmost red circle is for the commercially zoned parcel, but it's within the residential plan area statement, but it's actually vacant public land. And finally, the red circle on the lake zoned recreation facility is in the residential plan area statement, but is actually condos. So these inconsistencies prevent new projects because they have no avenue to get reviewed and approved. So the basic process for developing an area plan is going to be a multi-year coordinated effort between the county, TRPA, partner agencies, and the public. And this slide kind of lays out the basic building blocks. We're currently at the community visioning portion, and then we'll move into drafting the document and the initial environmental review. We'll then release a draft document and draft document and environmental review for public feedback. And that feedback will inform our revisions for our final drafts. And that will go out for final public comments before hearings at both the Planning Commission and before you lovely folks. And then, or as well as TRPA's Advisory Planning Commission, Regional Plan Implementation Committee, and the Governing Board. So the document needs to be approved by both the county and TRPA. And as Thea said, staff has known that a Tahoe area plan was described in the general plan and on the project prioritization matrix. And late last year, we realized we were going to have some grant funding that was going to expire. So we quickly pivoted to use that grant funding to start this process since it has been so long. And then I will just clarify, Supervisor Heidel, that the TGPA ZOU process did have some hearings in Tahoe. They were going to address this at that time, but the staff quickly figured out that it was a much larger problem and needed its own process. So we are in a phased approach, like Thea said, 3 phases. Phase 1 is going to include the community visioning, outreach, the consistency study I described earlier, and a draft outline. Phase 2 is going to be include completing our first draft of the document and environmental analysis, additional community workshops, and then culminate with the final draft document. And phase 3 includes the final comment period, public hearings, and possible adoption. This slide shows the specifics for phase 1. So we're currently, like I said, in the public outreach and engagement process. We have also posted an online survey. We have a live website along with some social media posts that we've been using and some newspaper articles that have been published, as well as postcards that have been mailed out a few weeks ago to all residents within the Tahoe portion of El Dorado County. So this is what our website and survey look like. The goal of the website, survey, and outreach materials is to try to generate lots of comments on our area plan. They were launched April 12th. And so far, we have a mapping function on the website. On the right-hand side, you'll see it kind of says, we want to hear from you. And if you scroll down, you'll see that mapping function. It's really neat. Check it out. If you want to do a different sort of outreach for a specific area, it's a great way to get specific comments in specific areas. So far, we have just 24 public comments, but we're continuing to put out social media posts and try to get the word out. So far, the website has 524 unique visits to the website. This website, Tahoe, tedareaplan.org.com. .com, will remain active throughout the duration of this whole process. So it would be a one-stop shop for the public to get draft documents, know when the upcoming public meetings are, know when the public workshops and the public meetings will be held. So if you go to our website now, you'll see a slide like this that shows the specific areas and times and dates for in-person meetings. So the purpose of doing all this outreach is to really figure out what we don't know. We don't know what we don't know right now, and to learn what's important to each community. Like Supervisor Lane asked, we have one for Myers. We were very specific, just talking to people in Myers, but what do people in Fawn Leaf want? What do people in Tahoma want? We need to figure out what's a concern to them. We're also going to be following up in-person meetings with 2 virtual meetings. The first virtual meeting will be held about a week after the in-person meetings, and will have the same format. So those folks will get the same opportunity to comment. And then we're going to follow up with a final virtual meeting summarizing everything that we have heard, so that the public can see that we've been listening. We're also going to be coordinating stakeholder group meetings and have a technical advisory committee. We presented the TED to the Planning Commission on April 25th. Their comments were generally supportive of the process and need for coordination between TRPA and county land use documents. Their comments included coordinating with the city of South Lake Tahoe and Placer County, as well as maintaining consistency with the rest of the general plan. They really wanted to have a new plan that blended with adjacent land uses and jurisdictions, as well as the West Slope. And they also had concerns about the need for housing and its availability. So to summarize, we've been directed by the general plan and the long-range planning matrix to create the TED. The documents regulating land use in Tahoe are decades old, and with changing regional plan and state law, need to be brought up to current standards. This slide has the TED website, which is .com, and our email addresses. And like Thea said, we're all here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. That was an excellent presentation to help us all understand what you're embarking on. Supervisor Lane, do you have any introductory comments on this item?
Well, I just want to point out, since we always see you guys on Zoom, that these people really have bodies below the shoulders. It's great to have you here in person, and great presentation. Thank you.
Excellent. I do have a question for you before. Sure see the need for this. And as Supervisor Heidel pointed out, this has been a long time coming. And horrified to think of the challenges folks have if they're having to wrestle with these competing documents and perhaps not have the clarity they need. For my own edification and understanding, since this is primarily funded, the first 2 phases are funded, but there's going to be a bulk of funding that will be needed to find for the phase 3. How will this impact perhaps other initiatives on the long-range planning matrix that we have already embarked on? And I'm particularly thinking community design standards. Just need to ask that question.
I can try that one.
Okay.
We have targeted TOT funding and some affordable housing funding. So we certainly understand the LRP matrix is long and diverse with many priorities, right?
Right. We have a lot of demands.
A lot of demands,
Yeah.
And not the dollars to
Right.
meet all those demands.
Exactly.
So absolutely understand that. We'll have to continue to work within our department to prioritize our work and seek funding. We're always looking for grant funding and opportunities, coordinating with TRPA, looking for state funding. I think we've been really fiscally sound in producing this thus far by scrambling to take advantage of this expiring funding. We're certainly grateful to the board for its TOT allocation, and I would imagine that we may ask again for TOT funding for phase 3, since we know there's such a strong tie between Tahoe and TOT dollars.
That would make sense. So I'm happy to hear that has perhaps a more dedicated funding source to that. And please do not mistake my comments that I don't want to embark on this or think that it's important. I think it's very, very important. But the community design standards have been a long time in the making, and wouldn't want that funding to be jeopardized.
I had a follow-up question for clarity. The affordable housing fees, what segment of affordable housing fees would the $100,000 would they be coming from? Is it strictly in the the Tahoe region? Is it across the county? I'm just trying to understand the boundaries of where those fees are coming from.
I believe it is countywide.
Okay. All right, and it's affordable housing. Now, I got to look into that a little bit more because that just doesn't seem like it's completely in sync, but maybe Sue can help me understand the relationship, not today, but at a future point in time, because I'm
Yeah.
just questioning how we determine that, particularly when it gets to the next phase.
Yes.
Because if we determine TOT is not right, has become, I just want to understand that whole basis of estimates of where the fundings are coming from a little bit more. The second thing is, I don't know, do we have a map, a GIS representation of what this area is? Would basically carves out the city of South Lake Tahoe, et cetera, because we do have a map that shows the whole region, but is there something on the website at this point? I haven't looked at the website.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
There'll be a map on the website
That
right
map-
there with there's the boundary, and you can see
Okay.
the carve out for the city of South Lake Tahoe.
All right, got it. Great. That's a good start because visually, at least for us that don't live in Tahoe, it's trying to orient to what is included and what's excluded. So.
Oh, yeah, no, it's the whole basin, county portion of the basin. And as, you know, Thea and Melanie said, we have many diverse communities all the way coming along the West Shore and through Myers and down Pioneer Trail. And so our job is to try to engage with those unique communities and hear them, and then try to tailor or customize, you know, our standards, our zoning for those communities as best we can.
Okay,
Excellent.
great.
Just a follow-up question too. Go ahead, Ms.
Oh, I
Graybill.
just wanted to add on to Supervisor Thomas. We are, I believe, the LRP team is bringing back the matrix as we do on an annual basis,
Right.
as you know. And I believe it's going to be later this summer. And so you will get to, you know, see the matrix and see all of the projects that the LRP team is working on. The TED is on that list, as I believe Melanie noted in her presentation.
Great. We always appreciate refreshing and having a refreshed understanding of our long range matrix. Supervisor Lane, did you have a question?
I
or
did.
comment?
Yes, I did. Mr. Ferry, if you could please also tie in how affordable housing is so significant here in the basin with the recent Tahoe Regional Planning Agency amendments that came out and you know, talk a little bit about how those segue, because I think your question is good, but affordable housing is being controlled and mandated by the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. And any area plan that we do, we have to either abide by that, or we have to show how a different program will achieve the same goals.
That's
But
helpful.
affordable housing in the basin is significant right now.
That's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Supervisor Lane. And you really said it. I mean, I mentioned it earlier, but housing in Tahoe is pretty astoundingly expensive now. And if I didn't have the good fortune of moving here 25 years ago, I would definitely not be able to buy a house today. There's just no question about it. And I think many individuals are in that boat. And that is our reality. So affordable housing is an incredibly hot topic. TRPA, through many initiatives, they have a Tahoe Living Working Group. They have a lot of stakeholders focused on affordable housing and trying to determine how their rules can incentivize affordable housing. And so they've gone through, Thea mentioned this, a multi-phased approach where they've tried to make ADUs easier to build. We're also working on that. Recently in phase 2, they amended density, height, coverage standards within town centers and some other higher density areas to try to, again, make affordable housing cheaper to build. Like Supervisor Lane said, we as a county either need to adopt those regulations in our area plan, which is only a small portion of our county, right? We've demonstrated that Myers is only one little sliver up here. So we really see the need to expand this area plan to cover the whole jurisdiction so that we can incorporate rule changes like that. They're also embarking on phase 3 to look at additional incentives and doing a lot of equity studies and engaging with more disadvantaged communities, all really good things that we need to be a part of. And in order to take advantage of that, this area plan needs to conform with that effort too.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Are there any more board questions or comments before we move? All right. So the purpose of this item is a workshop to solicit input and encourage public comments on this TED Tahoe El Dorado area plan, knowing that it's going to be an ongoing initiatives and efforts. So Kim, let's open up public comment on this item, please.
Now taking public comment on item number 21, individuals will have 3 minutes to address the board. The timer will notify you when your time is up. Public comment will be taken first from those participating in the boardroom and then from those participating through Zoom. For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. If you're joining the meeting by phone, press *9 to indicate a desire to comment. If you're joining by Zoom, press the raise hand button. Please voluntarily state your name for the record.
Good afternoon. Nice to see you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Board of Supervisors, staff, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, my name is Steve DeShera and my company is Sustainable Community Advocates. And in the course of my work, I follow all the local jurisdictions and their interactions with TRPA. Staff did a good job. This is a huge undertaking, but very important. I believe that I heard the staff reference the 1969 compact. The operative current compact is the 1980 compact. It's Public Law 96551, in case anybody was going to go to their online opportunity to look and see what that says. And that's the interesting thing about it was it changed the way that TRPA votes on projects, and it also incorporated the environmental thresholds. So I think if somebody wants to go back and research where the current compact comes from, it's the 1980 compact. But I do encourage this board to support your staff and the outreach efforts that have been described. Many years ago, when I first moved to Tahoe, I lived in Tahoma, and it's sometimes a forgotten community. And so I think incorporating the rest of the county here at the lake, in addition to the Myers area and the plan there, would be a very good thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name's Lynn Barnett. I'm here for two reasons. One, I'm president of St. Joseph Community Land Trust, who I hope will be recognized as a stakeholder. We're currently with partners building the Sugar Pine Village Affordable Housing Project at the South Tahoe Y, which will be 248 units when completed. We have 2 phases under construction right now, and we'll be occupying the first 60 units this fall. When completed, that'll have about 800 residents. Altogether, with our other projects, we'll have, at completion of the Sugar Pine Village, we'll have 308 affordable housing units, affordable and moderate income housing units for well over 1,000 residents of the South Shore area. So we would like to be considered a stakeholder and hope to be reached doing that. So that's my volunteer job. I'm with Wells Barnett Associates. We're a local environmental planning firm. I support this process. It's very timely. I was on the original team for the Myers area plan. I'm very proud of that plan because it's simple and easy to understand. I work all around the basin, and I don't mean to be overly critical, but the Placer County and the Washoe County area plans can get hard to interpret. Mostly their maps are terrible. And I hope that you look at this with a view to the future, like how it's going to be used, and to make sure your maps are clear and easy to understand. I would recommend that you minimize cross-referencing in the document, especially cross-referencing to other county documents, general plan, bring those kind of things right into the plan so people aren't constantly going back and forth. That's a great help. And again, Myers does that, I think. And clarify your processes, make it clear what our staff level processes that could be, our projects can be approved by boards and who that board is, and the county, your board, this board. And then finally, and I really mean this, please stay on schedule. We've had a number of area plans that we worked on over the years, or had projects in those area plans, I should say, and the time delays cost clients money, and people lose interest in property when you don't stay on schedule. So this is a big endeavor. Work hard to stay on schedule. That's my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And congratulations on Sugar Pine Village. That's a beautiful
Yeah,
project.
thank you very much.
We look forward to seeing that. Any other comments on this board item? Welcome back.
Hi, Linda Witters again. As much as I don't want to talk about this, I was there, and so I'm going to talk about it. I was there in 1992 when the community plan team got together. That's 32 years. My husband was on the community planning board, the original one. I read all the documents. The plan was given to us That plan wasn't created by the community. TRPA came and said, here's what your plan will be. And then even when, I believe it was 2012, the plan was redone, there were numerous meetings, numerous comment times. There were hundreds of comments put in by the community members in Myers. And then everything was thrown out. And there was a very last meeting where a bunch of stickers were handed out, and all the stickers were on plans that they wanted the outcome to be. This is called the Delphi technique, where the only thing that's offered to you is what they want to be the outcome. And so even though people had commented and participated, what came out of that was what TRPA wanted it to be. And then come to last fall, they show up in Myers and say, by the way, your 3-story limit, we're throwing it out. We're making it 5 stories. By the way, you want parking? No, no parking. I mean, to call this a community plan is an insult. I'm sorry. We, all of us, including you, pay taxes to El Dorado County. We don't pay taxes to TRPA. And then TRPA took a grant, and Mr. Ferry was in on it, along with El Dorado County. It's called the HIT grant, HIT. And in it, the money that's given, it's a DEI program, diversity, equity, inclusion. And then they come out to Myers and say, by the way, and this was in the paper, Julie Reagan said, we've blown it and we've incentivized luxury development in the entire basin. And now they're coming to Myers to fix it. And I don't appreciate it. I want this board to represent me. I want this board to act like we pay taxes to El Dorado County, because we don't pay taxes to TRPA. Find me one resident who believes that they have validity in our lives here. Governing happens by the consent of the governed. And I don't know one person that doesn't earn their money from TRPA that gives them any credit. So every time you turn our lives over to them, you're not acting on our behalf. Find me anybody who believes that way. I'd like to hear from them.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate them. All right, anyone else? All right, let's go online, Kim.
Now taking public comment from online participants. There's no additional public comment.
All right, thank you all. I'll close public comment on this. And once again, it was to solicit input, encourage public comments, knowing that this is going to be an ongoing effort that will be a robust process. So any final comments, Supervisor Lane? All right, we look forward to it. Thank you so much. Thank you all. All right, we have a 2:30 open forum soon, but let's get to number 22. I mean, what do I say? I meant 12:30, pardon me, 12:30, but let's hear item 22, which is a hearing.
Item number 22 is a hearing from the Chief Administrative Office and the Board of Supervisors Fire EMS Jurisdictional Reorganization Ad Hoc Committee, recommending the board consider the following with regards to the Meeks Bay Fire Protection District dissolution and annexation of district area to the North Tahoe Fire Protection District. 1, conduct a public hearing to consider the effects on fees, charges, assessments, taxes, and other revenues resulting from the transfer of general fund annual tax increment to the North Tahoe Fire Protection District. 2, adopt and authorize the chair to sign a resolution accepting the exchange of property tax base and increment for the annexation. 3, adopt and authorize the chair to sign a resolution approving the negotiated transfer of general fund ATI to North Tahoe Fire Protection District. 4, adopt and authorize the chair to sign a resolution finding a public benefit will be derived from providing a one-time payment of $992,000 to North Tahoe Fire Protection District to facilitate the reorganization of the Meeks Bay and North Tahoe Fire Protection Districts. And 5, adopt and authorize the chair to sign a resolution finding a public benefit will be derived from reimbursing North Tahoe Fire Protection District for local agency formation commission fees and costs up to $42,000 related to the reorganization of the Meeks Bay and the North Tahoe Fire Protection Districts.
That was a mouthful. Well done. And with that, I open this public hearing. So who will be presenting on this item?
I'll take it, Madam Chair.
Excellent.
So in the interest of time, I'll be brief. There's a lot of detail on the background in the board item. Do want to reach out and thank Chief Layton and Director Miller for being here today. They were part of the working group that met every 2 weeks for quite a while to get to where we are today. And hopefully this is one step closer. The board approved in concept a deal, for lack of a better word, in January, a package that would have provided a lump sum payment of $792,000 of TOT funding, and then equalizing of the annual tax increment across the newly formed district, with the understanding that the district would continue, North Tahoe would continue to operate a station in Meeks Bay that would meet the standards of coverage. And the board also recommended at that point that the Meeks Bay special taxes and special assessments remain at their current levels rather than being reduced as the departments, the two districts were looking at considering. At that meeting, the board agreed to add an additional $200,000 for a total lump sum payment of $992,000, and that is still all coming from transient occupancy tax, and authorized us to go forward to the two districts with that proposal. Each of the districts met and accepted the terms of that proposal, with the exception of equalizing the special taxes and the special assessments. So it was really important to the board, and one of the reasons that they had asked for the equalization of the annual tax increment is they want to see consistency across the entire district. So they weren't comfortable with the Meeks Bay part of their district paying more annually on their property tax bill than the rest of the district. So we are recommending that the board sort of defer to that that request of the two boards. It is their option to voluntarily reduce their revenue in that way. And so there was consensus on that deal. So the number of resolutions that we have here just implement various of those points. I do want to point out that the shift of the general fund annual tax increment is a voluntary shift under a different section of the Revenue and Taxation Code than is normally dealt with under annexations. And so we are required to hold a public hearing and find that some very specific conditions exist that justify the transfer of that tax. So I will just go very quickly through that justification. So first, the board needs to find that revenues are available for this purpose. So what we are looking at is not a transfer of the general fund base property tax. So our tax as it stands now would not decline in that area. What we are looking at is giving up a portion of the future growth. So it's a pretty small portion. It's across 4 tax rate areas. The total cumulative impact is about 12% of the increment, and we estimate that to be $8,000 to $12,000 per year. Of course, that depends on what the growth level is in the future years. So we find that it is not reducing revenues; it is simply foregoing potential future revenue growth. The transfer will not result in any increase in the ratio between the amount of county general fund revenues that are generated by regulatory licenses, use charges, user fees, or assessments, and the amount of revenues the county uses to finance its current level of service. So in other words, we're not giving up this future tax increment and then going and increasing fees or other taxes on residents to make up the difference. We are not doing that. The transfer will not impair the ability of the county to provide existing services. So in essence, as I just said, we are saying this is a de minimis increase. It is really, the districts understand that they're not going to gain a lot through this, but it is, I think, fairly symbolic so that they can demonstrate to their residents that the tax increment is equal district-wide. And then finally, the transfer will not result in reduction of property tax revenues to school entities. So of course, as in any annexation, we are not touching any of the portion of the property tax that goes to schools in those areas, in those tax rate areas. So those are the findings we need to make. And I do want to point out that as you can see, that voluntary shift of the county general fund increment has a much higher standard in revenue and taxation code. We have to find that these conditions exist, which fortunately in this situation, the amounts are very small, so it wasn't very difficult. But I bring that up because I want to also point out, as we said several times in the staff report, we don't intend this to be any kind of precedent-setting action that we're taking today. There is a set of circumstances in the Meeks Bay area that is unique in the county. The situation where we have a highly impacted tourist area, it is very geographically remote. And there are currently no employees left in the Meeks Bay district because they have been functionally consolidated for several years through a shared services agreement. So there really aren't any other viable options to stabilize the service here. There isn't another agency that could easily or naturally provide the service, including CAL FIRE. And the option, if we weren't to proceed with the annexation, would be to have Meeks Bay go back and rehire staff and a chief and try to stand up their own fire department. And realistically, that would result in a reduction in level of service for the residents there because they have received an increased level of service through their shared service agreement with North Tahoe. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you for helping break down what appears a very complicated, and it is a complex board item, reducing it down in simple terms, because I know there's been a lot of effort on this and a lot of conversations between the districts. So thank you for that. You mentioned the uniqueness of the situation is not only is it remote, but during the winter, it's geographically cut off from other potential service operators, should this not go forward. And that was certainly a important characteristic, and wanted to acknowledge on public comment, our auditor brought in a comment that also reflected what you just talked about this is a unique circumstance because the numbers are so small. It is not hard to make these findings, and this is not to be taken as a precedent setting for how the county is going to handle other consolidations, and that's important to articulate.
So if you're okay with that, I'd like to say his specific words, just the summary. It appears that we can afford this tax increment shift, but we can't afford many more without significant reductions to county spending in other areas. That sets the tone for what happens in other consolidations. So, but this is truly unique in my opinion.
It is. Excellent. Any board comments before I offer comments for the Meeks Bay or North Tahoe Fire Protection District? No? All right. At this point, would any member of the Meeks Bay or North Tahoe Fire Protection District like to come on up and address this board? Just want to thank you both for your collaborative efforts to bring us to this point. Good morning or good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and honorable members of the board. Thank you for hearing us today. I'm Edward Miller. I'm president of the board of directors and unofficial fossil on the board, having served since 42 years now.
Wow.
So I have I'm not saying that for glory, I'm saying it because I have a unique perspective on our district and the way it operates. With me today, our Chief Steve Layton and also Director Bob Millslagel. I want to first thank Supervisor Lane for spearheading and Sue Henneke and her office for all the assistance they've given us in our meetings. I want to say that I love our county. I know a lot of people come up here with consternation and just comments that are inappropriate or just negative, maybe not inappropriate, but I really love our county a lot. I spent 36 years at Civil Service Commission, and I serve on Brook Lane's, Supervisor Lane's District 5 Advisory Committee and the Measure S Oversight Committee as well. So I speak with an affection to our county and the processes. This has been a very long process. I've been waiting to colloquially pull the pin until this annexation takes place. And quite frankly, it's been more than half my life, and I would really like to see it happen. We were a very tiny organization when I signed on as a volunteer lieutenant before I was recruited for the board. We had mostly all volunteers with a 22-year-old chief. We were really a small, very tiny and not the best trained agency, but we did the best we could. Our residents and taxpayers have tremendous affection for us. They've approved and voted on every single tax assessment and benefit assessment and special tax. Even in 2009, in the heart of the recession, when we asked for $195, people, and we only took 135 the first year, people came to us at our pancake breakfast with cash in hand saying, we voted 195, we want to pay 195. So we have a wonderful community. I know we're kind of the tail of the dog. We are geographically separated. We don't have a sheriff a good part of the winter since losing our resident deputy. And so it's a difficult area to service. And Meeks Bay Fire has been the agency that connected us to El Dorado County for so many years. We've been under functional consolidation, as Sue Henneke mentioned. It's been silky smooth. When our chief retired about 14 years ago, we decided it would be more efficient for us to hire and contract with North Lake Tahoe Fire, which provides our ambulance service anyway through a contract directly with the county, not with Meeks Bay. A lot of people in our district don't even know that this, or don't know that this consolidation hasn't taken place. They see the North Tahoe engines. They see the Meeks Bay engines. Meeks Bay engines are seen in Kings Beach and in Tahoe City in Placer County because we all operate individually. But there's a saying in the public utility district in Tahoe City that as long as the toilets flush and softball starts on time, we don't care what else they're doing. Well, when we make an emergency response, nobody looks at the back of our turnout coats or the logo on our engine to decide who I'm going to let save my life. So what I'm getting at is this is for the good of the people. When the idea first came up, I was somewhat opposed. I was very protective of our little fire district that could give such personal service to people. Hours after an alarm, the chief would stop by, or I'd go over and see how people were doing. And it's a well-loved organization. And North Tahoe Fire is also a well-loved organization. They're highly professional. They have over 50 sworn staff. Meeks Bay at its height, I think we had 6 plus an office manager. They have been able to decrease response times. They have equipment that Meeks Bay Fire did not have. And all in all, this functional consolidation over the last 13 or 14 years has been a boon to the community. And I just want to tell you one quick little anecdote, which I brought up at the Measure S Oversight Committee to give you an idea of interagency cooperation. This winter, during one of the biggest of our snowstorms, a woman in the district who had run out of oxygen bottles made contact saying that she didn't have any more oxygen. There was a power outage and she couldn't even use her oxygen generator. Through a couple of different processes, EDSO, OES, DOT came out and plowed, and paramedics from North Tahoe came and saved those 3 people. All they wanted to do was go a half a block to a house with a generator where they could plug in their oxygen. That's all it took. And so this is one of those situations where we saw great interagency cooperation, and North Tahoe Fire / Meeks Bay Fire were there to take care of these people. And that's the kind of thing that, you know, makes me remember that when I started at 18 years old as a volunteer back in Connecticut, that although I've been a broadcast journalist and nonprofit director of Shakespeare and music, fire is the one thing that has been constant throughout my life, and Alaskan Malamutes. And so I'm a strong advocate for this annexation. I think it's going to do nothing but good things for our community, and it totally is logical. So I thank you all for your consideration. I thank Supervisor Lane for helping so much. Sue Henneke, Sue, you've been an asset to us. It's a difficult process with 2 counties, 2 LAFCOs, and it's been moving slowly, but now we're at a conclusion, and we'd like very much to see it come to fruition.
Thank you so much for your comments and for your service to our community.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much. Thank you for your service. It's nice to
Thank
see
you.
some of the faces whose names I've only seen. And again, Supervisor Parlin, I've got goosebumps. The letter that you wrote to me after I resigned from the Civil Service Commission is something that stays close to my heart. Thank you
so
all very much.
Appreciate it. Chief Latham, you have any comments? All right. So at this point, we will open public comment.
Now taking public comment on item 22, individuals will have 3 minutes to address the board. The timer will notify you when you have 30 seconds remaining to comment. And, excuse me, the timer will remind you when your time is up. Public comment will be taken first from those participating in the meeting room and then from those on Zoom. For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. If you're joining by phone, press *9. If you're joining by Zoom, press the raise hand button. Please voluntarily state your name for the record.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors, staff, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, Steve DeShera, a longtime resident of Tahoma for my early years here at the lake. And one could hardly, everything Ed said is true. And I just believe that it really is the right thing for the community to do, and really appreciate the work that Supervisor Lane and all of you have done to help make this happen. Looked for a while that it wouldn't, and that would be a missed opportunity. So as a longtime resident of the area, thank you very much for your support. And we'll be at the Placer County Board of Supervisors meeting on the 25th of June to offer similar comments so that they can conclude their part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your comments and your support. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, let's go online, Kaylee.
Now taking public comment from online participants. Now taking public comment from Lou Fielding.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I'm Louis Fielding. I'm also one of the directors of the Meeks Bay Fire District. I was on the task force with Ed. And I just also wanted to, I won't repeat any of, Ed, I think stated it really well about how much the community appreciates this and how important it'll be for us. And I want to thank the board for your support for this process. I think we will be stronger as part of North Tahoe, and as well as just how important this is, I think, for the visitors, the county, and everybody that comes and enjoys the West Shore. Our district goes from Tahoma, which is a pretty small, often isolated community, all the way through Rubicon Bay and down into Emerald Bay. And I'm sure everybody knows who's ever driven through there in the summer. It's a very highly visited area. There's almost more campsites than there are households. And as the first responders for this area, people tend to get hurt in Eagle Falls and in campgrounds. There's campfires, which is its own issue. And so as the first responders for that, we have a lot of responsibility for such a small community to take care of such a really sort of treasured area. So we really do appreciate the county and the board's support for this process and everything you've done.
Thank you. Appreciate you calling in.
Thanks.
There is no additional public comment.
All right, thank you all. And with that, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for action.
I just wanted to say thank you, everyone. It's great to see this actually come to fruition. It was so shaky so many times, and I appreciate everyone hanging in there, and Sue, your leadership on this. I can't even imagine what you went through with all those conversations. And so congratulations too, by the way. This is very exciting.
So was that a motion?
No, I will defer to our local county supervisor.
Well said. I agree with everything that you just said. It was really when the CAO's office got involved that we started to make some moves. And congratulations to Meeks Bay. Thank you for hanging in there all these years. And thank you for your leadership. And we just look forward to solidifying this relationship with North Tahoe. You have been fabulous to work with as well. And this is such an unusual annexation between two different counties. But I think that when you look at us on a map regionally, we are all one, right? So thank you for accepting us into your family, and we will be good partners on our end. So with that, I would like to move approval of the annexation between Meeks Bay and North Tahoe Fire Department.
Second.
Excellent. Any further comment and discussion? No. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved unanimously. So thank you so much. And may this be a blessing for the community. We have no doubt that it will be. Really appreciate everyone's efforts to get here. Excellent. So is the board willing to, do you need a quick bio break, or do we take public comment and then we'll take a break and then have a working lunch with item 23 and 24? Are you okay in doing public forum right now?
Open
Yeah,
forum, yes.
Open-
Yeah,
okay,
go
open
ahead.
forum,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Great, let's do that.
should work.
So Kaylee, let's open up open forum.
Now taking public comment on open forum, individuals will have 3 minutes to address the board. The timer will notify you when your time is up. Public comment will be taken first from those participating in the boardroom and then from those participating through Zoom. For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. If you're joining by phone, press *9. If you're joining by Zoom, press the raise hand button. Please voluntarily state your name for the record.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Uh, Good afternoon to the Board of Supervisors, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Paul Camacho, and I'd like to define a few terms of what I'm going to address before you today. Nielsen is a private company. According to Wikipedia, Nielsen Media Research is an American firm that measures media audiences. The Nielsen TV ratings have been produced in the United States since the 1950 and 51 television season. DMA. DMA is a designated market area which is established by Nielsen. El Dorado County is an orphan county, which means it's split into 2 DMAs. The first DMA involves Sacramento, Stockton, Modesto, and West El Dorado County. The second DMA is Reno, which consists of the counties of Nevada and El Dorado County East, where we are located. As you traveled to this part of El Dorado County today, roughly once you passed the area of Kybers on Highway 50, you entered into the Reno DMA. This means no access to broadcast California news or influence from that point east unless you reside in Placer County. At one time, El Dorado County East, our area had access to 2 broadcast news outlets. As of October 2023, we have none. A complaint filed with the FCC resulted in a deferral to Charter Communications regarding the lack of California programming. The response from Charter was, current law dictates which single broadcast station, MVPDS, must carry in each local designated market, DMA. The boundaries of these broadcast markets were established in 1950 by Nielsen for rating purposes. El Dorado County, California, in which South Lake Tahoe is located, is part of the Reno DMA. As such, Charter provides Mr. Camacho with the broadcast stations for that market. 74 years ago, El Dorado County was much more different than it is now in 2024. The city of South Lake Tahoe was not even in existence at that time. During the Angora and Caldor files, the Sacramento media was intensely involved with use of a helicopter and reporters embedded in the area. This coverage was not available to us. If you are able to stream Sacramento media, you can get real-time news, but all political and local advertising is not available due to the Reno DMA. And I understand that viewers in the Reno DMA are not interested in California news and events, but we in El Dorado County East are governed by California and have no voice in the state of Nevada. I've expressed concerns to U.S. Senator Alex Padilla. I've also met with a representative for California State, Maria Alvarado Gil. I have met in a group with Supervisor Brooke Lane, and she's been receptive, and we have asked for a county resolution which requests unification of El Dorado County into the Sacramento DMA to present to the FCC. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if you had more comments on that, please submit those written comments to all of us, and we do read them. And we know this is an ongoing issue that the Supervisor Lane's been working on. So thank you very much for highlighting that for us.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate hearing your perspective on this issue. Yeah. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Sandy, and I am here as one of We the People. We thank you for agreeing to be servants of the people, for having taken your oaths to uphold and defend our constitutions. We are here to inform you. We are here in peace to give you notice and instructions so that you and your agents may provide due care. This notice of election maladministration has been given to the California Governor, to the California Secretary of State, the California Supreme Court, to the California Senate and Assembly. We are now giving you a copy. In the past 4 years, we have witnessed the form of elections change from one-day elections to an election season without the consent of the people. However, we have learned that the government was never granted any authority to change the ways of elections, not even in times of emergency. Despite adamant claims that there are no instances of election malfeasance, that the election process is to be trusted as certified, we have learned that there are multiple cases of election maladministration, including in the city of Lodi, California, where a council member has been convicted of election fraud. We have included copies of court cases in the notice packets just given to you. Please take notice that the people have assembled together, consulted peaceably by right, and realize that our servants in every state, as well as the federal government, have been led to believe that they are generating the basic rules and terms of elections. However, the people now know that the foundational law in the Constitution are the rules which must be followed with exact due regard. Please take notice that the California Constitution, Article 4, Section 2B, grants power to the government to hold our elections on a single day. Furthermore, the California Constitution prohibits improper practices and disqualifies all votes from underage, non-resident, non-citizens, mentally incompetent, and felons incarcerated or on parole. Any deviation from the Constitution results in nullification of the election. Maxim 46D states where the law prescribes a form, the non-observance of it is fatal to the proceeding. My colleague will continue.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and Board. Good to
afternoon.
see you all again. Thank you for your service and thank you for allowing us to speak. My name is Deborah Grinder. The main objective of government is the protection and preservation of personal rights, private property, and public liberties. The government just serves for our benefit as public officers, trustees, and servants of the people. Since this board has a history of certifying elections that have not followed the exact form specified in the Constitution, we are very concerned that another maladministered election will occur in our fair county. Please take notice that in our Republican form of government, all servants have sworn to protect our rights to constitutional elections as a condition to be hired as trustees. As an elected official, do you believe it is your duty to always uphold the form of lawful elections as it's written in the Constitution? Or do you believe that you have been granted authority to conduct elections, count the votes, and certify election results that deviate from the Constitution? If so, please show constitutional authority, granting you the power to change the form of the people's elections within 15 days, sworn under penalty of perjury by affidavit, and post this granted authority conspicuously, notifying the public and all agents if you or you agree by acquiescence all statements in this notice to be true and in fact. If you cannot show where you got the authority and you take any action to certify future elections which do not follow the Constitution, your actions will be construed as being done with malice, intent, and full knowledge, and purposeful transgression against your trust indenture, your contract with the people, that would be the Constitution. This notice is given in peace with the love of Christ, that you and your agents may provide due care to those who have all the political power, the people. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Good afternoon.
My name is John Anderson. Welcome to Lake Tahoe.
Thank you.
I also am dealing with the designated media area that we are trying to change. Now, El Dorado County is the only county left in the state of California that is split between two states. It's just kind of bizarre. The following quote is from the FCC that I communicated with, and they said, some counties are unable to receive state news, sports, public affairs, public information, or emergency information, as we are with pandemic, fire, road conditions. The so-called orphan county problem can be addressed via petition to the FCC to modify upon request a television station, a cable and/or satellite operator, or a county government. That's why I'm here. Okay, the FCC makes a determination on whether to grant the modification based on the consideration of the 5 statutory factors demonstrated that they provide local service to the community. Nevada does not provide local service to us. Significantly, one factor requires consideration to the television stations that are located in the same state as the community considers modification. Placer County did this in the 1990s successfully, and they are no longer a split county. It's not that hard. Once the county passes and submits the resolution to the FCC, we, the public, can help the process by putting pressure on the DC politicians to speed the petition along. The policy that we're talking about changing is a policy, not a state law, not a federal law. It's not a legislative body. It's an adopted policy. And since it's an election year, it's easier to get the attention of the politicians. Any questions?
Thank you so much for your
Okay.
comments. Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Well,
Good afternoon. Supervisor Turnbow, or well, first off, thanks for letting me have the time. Supervisor Turnbow asked me to speak about this to provide full awareness for the board. I've got a map of the area I'm going to talk about that you all can look at. So basically, I'm here as the chairman of the Greater Cameron Park Area Fire Safe Council, not my other elected position. So I've been spearheading a project, a multi-agency project within the Cameron Park unit of the Pine Hill Preserve. And the preserve is about 500 acres. It impacts, we're looking at a 200-foot defensible space area to go forward with it. It includes federal, state, county resources. That's the BLM, CAL FIRE, OWOPR, and it was initiated by the Fire Safe Council taking this on. So benefits are about 10,000 households will be protected with defensible space from this high fuels area. And in early June, we will be having a planning meeting, which I've invited both supervisors that are impacted by this to attend so that their perspective can be heard as well. And there may be some funding requirements as much as only $200 a day to have 150 CAL FIRE resources available that are at the Ponderosa Center where Escaton used to be. And so they're going to utilize that. They'll be able to do a lot of work at only $200 a day. The county provides payment to the Bureau of Land Management to manage the Pine Hill Preserve. And the person that manages the Pine Hill Preserve has retired. So I would ask that the supervisors are given direction to say to the Bureau of Land Management, you guys cover these costs because it's something the county is paying for their parcel. And the parcel in here that has the slashed lines, that's the county parcel. So I wish to ask that the Board of Supervisors support this. It'll protect residents in the area, probably close to 20,000, or provide defense for about 20,000 residents. So that's my comments. Thank you.
thank you for your comments. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Appreciate the map too.
Yep.
Welcome back.
Okay, I just gave so you'll each have a copy of the notice of intent to modify natural precipitation. Notice is given that the Board of Regents of the Nevada System of Higher Education on behalf of the Desert Research Institute will continue to conduct a program of weather modification by artificial nucleation of clouds with silver iodide and other appropriate nucleating agents to increase useful precipitation at certain locations in the Tahoe Truckee watershed. It goes on to say that they will bomb us with weather modification material anywhere that runs into Nevada. which is the Upper Truckee River, the Lower anywhere here. And the federal government gave them $9.5 million to do this last year. But as they say, they continue because they've been doing it for a long time. They named their first drone the Brian Sandoval Silver Oxide Express. Brian Sandoval, current president of the University of Nevada and former governor of the state of Nevada. So why am I coming before the board to talk about this? Because this is being done all over Echo Summit, on every hill, behind every tree. They don't need planes anymore. You guys, and not you, Supervisor Lane, you weren't here, accepted $5 million from SMUD to remove snow and do maintenance on Ice House Road and Wrights Lake Road for a period of 5 years. Why are you working for SMUD in order to toxify our air column? Why are you doing this to us? It's your air too. What are we doing? I mean, you can go on geoengineeringwatch.org. It's the encyclopedia of all things that are done to our air column. And you can find documents going back to the 60s where they were doing it here and doing it in Shasta, but where they specifically have plans, American River Watershed, and it's led by the state of Nevada Desert Research Institute and SMUD. But you guys take an oath to us that you're going to protect us and work for us. And then you take money from SMUD. I realize this is a really bad legacy project. I heard about Krista, the beautiful legacy project, the positive gardening legacy project you told us about. You got an award last month. Fantastic legacy project. You guys come to office, you don't expect to hear it, and you're faced with this. Please help us.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Steve DeShera, and I'm here today in my capacity as the Director of Government Relations for Tahoe Chamber, and my colleague.
Yes, I'm Sharon Kerrigan with the South Tahoe Association of Realtors, and we are co-chairs of Keep Community First Coalition.
And the reason we formed the Keep Community First Coalition is because there have been a series of tax proposals from, if not the full city council, at least one member of the city council of South Lake Tahoe that we're very concerned about. And so far this year, we've managed to turn back 2 of those, at least for now. One was a 2% increase in the transient occupancy tax, which would have made South Lake Tahoe one of the highest TOT collectors in the country. And the other was a
minimum wage increase.
Right, minimum wage increase. We were able to terminate the council's discussion on making a minimum wage requirement in South Lake Tahoe of $23 an hour. And we had a lot of businesses here who testified how damaging that would be. The one that's out there still is one that you've probably heard about, which is this residential vacancy tax. And that we may collectively find out tomorrow whether or not that qualified for the ballot. But we at Keep Community First are assuming that it will, because we're gearing up a campaign to oppose this if it goes to the voters. We believe that we're here today to make sure that we are going to oppose it, because we think it will have a detrimental impact on a lot of things, but certainly property tax revenues for the county of El Dorado. So we would just want you to know that we are going to launch a campaign opposing the proposed tax, which the first year would be $3,000 if you get through the bureaucratic maze of somebody figuring out whether or not you're in your house or somebody's in your house for 183 days or not. And then if it's subsequently vacant, is determined to be vacant in future years, that'd be $6,000 a year. So this is, in our view, the classic example of taxation without representation, because most of the people who will be assessed have no vote or say in the matter. So I'll turn the rest of our comments over to Sharon.
Yes, thank you for listening to us on this. We understand that it doesn't directly affect this body. However, proposals like this do spread. And while it's well-intended, clearly housing is an issue. And we're learning from recent conferences, economic studies, that it's a national issue, affordability, that this is not the solution. You certainly don't want to put the cost of housing on the backs of housing and not on those who can't vote for themselves. So we're going to vigorously oppose. We just wanted to make you aware. We do believe that this would have a detrimental impact on property values and then the trickle down effect of fewer taxes coming into our governing agencies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the update. Appreciate that. Good afternoon. Welcome.
I'm Dave Kurtzman. I've been up here. Everybody talks about how long I've been here. I've been here going on 52 years. So I finally got up here to make a real comment. But I want to thank you for being here. I was part of the Charter Commission when we drew the charter, as was Janet McDougall. And one of the requirements was that the board would meet in each district at least once a year. I believe that was modified by a vote to may meet in each district once a year, as opposed to shall. Is that correct? Yeah, that was on the ballot. And so be it. But the fact that you were willing to come here to hear what, our community is about and to take the tour you're going to take this afternoon is significant, and we appreciate it. And when I got here, we had 2 supervisors. 40% of the population was right here. Now our district runs from the Nevada state line to Camino. The next census, it's either going to take over a piece of Placerville, there goes your district, Wendy, or it's going to spread out into districts 2 and district 4. So it'll just be interesting to see how it changes. But that's such a perfect example of the demographic changes in our community. So again, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for the welcome. Really appreciate it. It's a privilege to be here. Is there anyone else? All right, Kaylee, let's go online, please.
Now taking public comment from online participants. There's no public comment.
All right. Well, thank you all for your open forum comments. We appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here and be more accessible to you, and we look forward to coming back again. At this point, the board's going to recess quickly, take a bio break, grab lunch, and then we will be back to hear item number 23 and then item number 24, recognizing that it is our schedule to depart here at 2. So for our afternoon tour. So we're on a kind of tight time frame. So we will be right back to have a working lunch. Thank you. That's great. Yeah, legs. Muted. Thank you. I doubt it. All right, we are back. And I have to admit, this is a first for the board. We have never eaten on the dais and conducted a meeting at the same time. So we're gonna, walk and chew gum. But appreciate everyone, everyone's grace as we move through a packed agenda. So Kim, let's hear item number 23, please.
Item number 23 comes from Planning and Building Department, recommending the board, one, approve the introduction of an ordinance adding County Code Section 110.18 to make Article 8 of Subchapter 1 of Chapter 1 of Division 1 of Title 25 of the California Code of Regulations as modified herein, operative on the limited density owner-built rural dwellings in Grizzly Flats community of El Dorado County. Two, waive reading of the full ordinance, read by title only, and continue this matter to May 21st, 2024 for final passage, second reading. And three, adopt and authorize the chair to sign a resolution approving findings for adoptions of regulations for limited density owner-built rural dwellings.
Well, welcome, Karen. This item's been before us many times, so nice to see it moving forward even further.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair and members of the board. Karen Garner, your Planning and Building Director. And as Kim is pulling up the slides, I just have a few to share. This will be a very quick presentation because, as you just mentioned, I've shared the program and the ordinance with you before. The last meeting, we talked about this on April 9th. It was brought to our attention that there were some residents that were outside the boundary that we were proposing that certainly were victims of the Caldor fire and wanted to rebuild and could take advantage of this program. And so we went back and took a look at the boundaries, and the one limitation that I have is that I worked with Pioneer Fire District when we were putting together these regulations, and specifically, probably one of the most important pieces of this program is that Pioneer Fire okayed the allowance of 750 square foot residents without having fire sprinklers. So as far as expanding the boundary, I still had to stay within Pioneer Fire District and of course, then pick up those that were affected. So
I apologize. The presentation is not showing.
I can come back to that and talk about really quickly. I do plan to, when we get this adopted and done and folks starting to build, I will reach out to folks with the mosquito fire. And then I also was contacted by a resident who lives in the Phillips Park area. There's a small residential area there that is private land, and see if we can expand to that. And actually, I know even the Forest Service has reached out and is talking to the county about possibly using Title 25 as a way to get some of the folks that are rebuilding the cabins on Forest Service land. That has a whole different set of issues with it. So that'll certainly be separate, but they have reached out. Also, as we talked in April, there was a thought of, can we provide pre-approved or pre-reviewed plans for 750 square foot dwellings that folks can use to further reduce the cost. And so we are working on that. And I do believe that there is a way to do that. We're going down a couple of different paths, and I'm very confident at least one of them, if not both of them, will work out to provide that. Because of Title 25, the plans do not have to be stamped by an architect. So there is, some cost reduction in that, finding a designer or even possibly my own staff that may be able to put together plans. The advantage of my own staff can do that is I know they'll like it and I'll know they'll approve it. So, so we are looking at those options as well. And then we are also further exploring one of the issues that comes up is with the lumber, and there's some options there, and I'm confident that's also an issue we can overcome. Most lumber in standard building has to be, goes through the mill and gets stamped and graded. This allows that doesn't need to be the case. However, you still want safe structures. So we're working with Butte County on how they approach that, but also looking and talking to some former lumber mill folks in the county that have that knowledge and expertise that may be able to help us out. And even though the lumber may not be stamped, it at least has been looked at and we know that it's good lumber and is safe. So that's the goal with that. If we aren't able to bring up the presentation, I can just refer to the attachments very briefly to talk about the area that is in question. And so I'll first refer to attachment E, which shows the red outline in attachment E is where the red outline was the previous boundaries. The brown area is the Caldor Fire burn scar, and then the black outline is the Pioneer Fire District area. So we started off with that and then worked through that to determine where the affected parcels were within those two boundaries. And then in attachment H, the actual copy of the presentation, that does give the map that we're going to adopt as part of this. Let's see. And but it is essentially, it is that attachment E is the map that we'll adopt. So if it is within the brown area, the burn scar and the black fire district boundary, then it is eligible to participate in this program. So that really, it gets very sparsely populated. There is probably outside of the red area, which was the Grizzly Flats Rural Center. I think you can advance to, I think it's that shows the affected parcels that had a home that burned down are in red. So as you see, most of them are clustered right around that middle where Grizzly Flats proper is, but there are a few that are scattered outside of that. If you advance to the next slide, again, the next slide shows the boundaries that will adopt in that black boundary. So that's Pioneer Fire District and the burn scar area. So we anticipate still the majority of the people that participate are going to be within the Grizzly Flats Rural Center boundary. There's probably about 25 parcels just north of that boundary where people lost their homes, and there may be a handful of people that participate there as well. And then scattered throughout is probably about another 20-25 through that entire area. So again, pretty sparsely populated once you get outside Grizzly Flat. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions. This is the first reading, so we'll take public comment and then come back at the next board meeting for second reading, and then it'll go, can adopt that 30 days after that second reading.
Thank you. And thank you, Kim, for working so hard to get the presentation up. That was helpful to see the map. Supervisor Turnbull, do you have any?
Yeah, I
comment?
just want to thank you, Karen. This has been a vision for a long time to try to help people in Grizzly Flat. So, and having that meeting with the people out there, at Pioneer Park and getting their input was just really fantastic. And especially when, she gets hugs from all these people out there because they're really grateful for what she's done. So I want to thank you on that. It was we talked about the tiny homes, but this is the next step. One of the things talking about Sierra Institute is built with these cross-laminated lumbers, what they did, and they have plans that they could reduce. I think they have plans that are 750 square feet and they're fire hardened homes. So I think that we need to kind of look at that and what they have to offer, because it's a great thing. Is what it is, and especially what it will reduce the insurance costs, especially when these people are trying to rebuild
That was
too.
Plymouth County. When we went to
Plymouth County, yeah,
Plymouth County, and I think Plymouth County's already
they're already doing it. Yeah.
approved those plans. So,
Yeah,
and we got to tour a couple of the models. So
Right.
it's very exciting.
Yeah, and not only that, I think, what did they say? It was 2.5 hours or something like that
To put it together, it was pretty cool.
No, that was
What?
2.5 hours
Of what?
of fire. before it could even, even
Oh,
burn down.
the
So
fire
that's how
rating.
much it was good. But the fire, by that time, the fire's already gone and passed.
Yeah.
So, and they're adopting it. They're actually meeting with the insurance commissioner and that board down there to try to reduce the insurance costs on the with these homes and stuff. So it might be a great thing, especially for the future of El Dorado County and for the whole state of California. So it's going to be a great thing, I think.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Karen, thank you so much for all your work on this. This is a really creative solution to a really hard and gut wrenching
is.
problem. So thank you. Any board comments before we go to public comment? All right, let's go to public comment on this item, Kim.
Now taking public comment on item number 23. Individuals will have 3 minutes to address the board. The timer will notify you when your time is up. Public comment will be taken first from those participating in the boardroom and then from those participating through Zoom. For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. If you're joining the meeting by phone, press *9 to indicate the desire to comment. If you're joining by Zoom, press the raise hand button. Please voluntarily state your name for the record.
Would anyone like to speak on this board item? All right, seeing none, let's go online, Kim.
Now taking public comment from online participants. There's no public comment.
Bring this back to the board for any further discussion or action.
No, I'll just make a move and approve.
Second. All right, with that, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Is approved.
Nice and quick.
Fabulous, thank you. All right, with this, we will have our last item before we go on our long anticipated tour, which is very exciting. So item number 24.
Item number 24 comes from Supervisor Lane recommending the board consider the following. 1, receive and file an overview and conduct a site visit of points of interest within the Lake Tahoe Basin. And 2, receive and file a presentation from Planning and Building Tahoe Planning Stormwater Management Program on Public Works Infrastructure Asset Management System.
Please state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Brooke Lane. Born and raised in beautiful South Lake Tahoe. You'll pull up that
I'm doing it right now.
PowerPoint. Okay. I'll just mention a couple of things. I'm doing a little bit of an overview of some things that you might see on the way while we're touring that we technically, legally cannot discuss. We will be a majority of the board. We will have the whole board on the shuttle together. I do ask that you not sit next, that we as supervisors not sit next to each other, sit next to somebody else. There'll be staff on board as well as members from my office. So some of the things that you're going to see are the condition of our roads. And I warned Raphael, is he in the room? He's hiding. He's
Oh, yeah.
I warned Raphael that we were going to have this conversation because it's important. And the condition of our roads in the basin are, if you take all the bad roads in districts 1, 2, 3, and 4, they do not add up to the number of failed roads that we have just in District 5. So you're going to see a lot of these as we travel. The reasons for the condition of the road are plentiful, but there comes a point in time in which, from a resident's perspective, there's no more excuses. Like, some people literally have lived here in the unincorporated part of the county for 40 years and their road has never been touched. We have extreme conditions here in Tahoe, as you know. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but certainly the amount of snow that we get, the big heavy equipment that we use to remove the snow, and then just coupled with, we could have, we're a population here of about 27,000 in the unincorporated part of the county combined with the city. Our tourism will swell to 120,000 on any given weekend. So the amount of impact on our roads is much greater than just that of a residential use. And they are starting to show the wear and tear. So we might say on the shuttle at some point, oh, we're traveling on one of those roads that I was telling you about, but we're not going to have a conversation about it other than maybe point it out to you. So I'm pointing out to you things that we might see along the way that we're not necessarily going to stop and look at, but we might point it out to you. The other thing that we will point out as we pass by is the Caltrans roundabout that is scheduled to begin construction next summer and be done all in one building year. We will pass through that intersection and we'll simply just make a note of the fact that this is the intersection that we were talking about where the second roundabout is scheduled to go. Just a point of interest, this is a Caltrans project that El Dorado County is taking the lead on. So just something to note. By the way, some of the funding for this project came from the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, really kind of shored up. We were short on the construction monies, and that grant helped us get over the hump. So we'll point that out to you as we pass by that. That's almost a $12 million construction project. The other thing that we want to show you, we're going to turn on to Apache after we pass that Pioneer intersection. I'm just going to point it out on the map here for you. So this is Apache. So we're going to turn off of Highway 50 onto Apache, and Apache is interesting to note because we're going to move a crosswalk also with Caltrans's support. But that also is a complete street project that El Dorado County is working on. They're going to be adding bike paths and walking paths on the side, and that's important because it leads directly to an elementary school. So it's also a safe way to go to school. Finally, we're going to turn left onto East San Bernardino. And that is a big project that the county right now is engulfed in, and that's an erosion control project. So we'll point those out to you. They won't necessarily be places where we stop. And both the Apache Street project and San Bernardino, the gentlemen who are in charge of that for the county will speak on that when we get to the bike bridge, and that'll be open to the public as well. So those are a couple of the key highlights I just wanted to mention that we're going to point out to you, but not to engage in a discussion on the shuttle, as that would violate the Brown Act. So with that, I would like to introduce Russ Weigart, who he's with the he's a stormwater coordinator for El Dorado County, and he's going to take us through the asset management software that I think you'll be very interested in.
Thank you, Supervisor Lane. That was very helpful to give us all a look at what we'll be talking about, viewing on our tour, but not talking about. So thank you very much.
There's a pointer on this, correct?
Yeah,
I can run it for you otherwise. Pointer, he wants a pointer.
oh, left, right.
There we go.
There
Got
it is.
that.
Welcome,
Left,
Russ.
right. Okay. All right. I'm still on the field trip here. Do I need to change? On the screen, yeah. Should I just pull up my presentation? Is it up here? I can't put it here. I mean, it would just be easier.
Is it
to
possible for you to use?
Yeah,
that?
no, it's fine.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right, so my name's Russ Weigart with the El Dorado County Tahoe Stormwater Division, work under Brendan Ferry. I'm going to be talking about the Public Works Infrastructure Asset Management System for El Dorado County. We've been working on this for 17 years. Shout out to Daniel Kickert, PE in our office, amazing engineer. We've been putting this together for quite some time. Donaldo Palarone also is from the DOT engineering. We work in conjunction with DOT maintenance on this. I work very closely with them on a daily basis, as well as the GIS survey division. They've been instrumental. So under Brendan's leadership, we've had creativity and innovation, interdepartmental coordination and collaboration, trying to just get everyone to work together. So quick snapshot of what this field maps looks like. Snap we developed over the last 17 years, and it has all county assets and infrastructure basin-wide. It's got conveyances, slopes, structures, pipes. Pipes would be anything water flows into. Conveyances would be anything water goes into and out of. So a drop inlet, it's a grate that water flows in and out of. as well as swales and channels, slopes, and retaining walls. We also put guardrails in there since we were doing this. So inventory, I'm going to talk about the development of this, a quick snapshot of what I'm going to be talking about. So El Dorado County, I think we're all pretty familiar with the Tahoe Basin portion of it, 25,000 people, approximately 200 miles of county roads, about 8,500 homes, 17 years in development with this asset management system. Since the day I started, I've been working on this, just a portion of our jobs, but 3 years of field verification work in converting our engineering CAD files, computer automated design, to a geographic information system. So it's quite the endeavor. I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but I just want to show that we started this in 2008 and it ended in 2020. It hasn't ended, it was still ongoing. But in 2008, we were mandated by the Regional Water Quality Control Board to do, through our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, to do an outfall inventory. So we had to go out and look at every outfall. So we went out with staff, hired engineering interns and seasonal help to map all of our infrastructure. And that's where it all began. And it was this big journey to get where we're at today. We mapped all of our watersheds to understand the volume of runoff coming out of our watersheds, the pollutant loading associated with it. That was for the Lake Clarity Crediting Program as part of the total maximum daily load for Lake Tahoe. Very comprehensive effort, a lot of science, a lot of engineering behind this stuff. So our initial mapping first take on this, we utilized county staff and extra help to build a database of all the infrastructure in Tahoe. We took our engineered design sets that we had in CAD, along with sending people out in the field with GPS units, global positioning system units, to log information. And we spent summers, multiple summers, logging this information to collect all the data we had basin-wide. Drop inlet, sediment traps, pipes, conveyances, treatment systems, basins, guardrails, you name it. I was collected from subdivision maps, record drawings, everything we could, and using a GPS unit in the field. So Dan's slogan here, our county is a wonder, and it truly is. At the time, we didn't have really a good process of where things were and the record of what we had. So we used a lot, we leaned heavily on old timers to give us information on what was where it was located, approximate age, if we even own it. You know, there was pipes people put across the street that was a handshake back in the 70s. So, you know, we don't know. Knowledge was slipping through the cracks back then. And as far as like location, age, size, and how much maintenance was associated with all this infrastructure. So pipes under decks, pipes in people's backyards, stuff we never really looked at or really didn't even know we had. And we found a lot of them. Run-on coming from Forest Service parcels onto our right-of-way, going directly into the creek. This also helped with the development of the environmental improvement program, where we prioritized projects, successfully got grant funding to be able to implement projects, which we directly worked with maintenance. So we made them maintenance friendly. So our original asset management, all the line work was stored in CAD, and all the information was stored in MS Access, the database associated with that. So computer automated design. All the data has since been converted to ArcGIS. It provides a valuable asset management tool and is a way to memorialize the data. We now have less knowledge slipping through the cracks of what we have. The original infrastructure MacBook, I'm just showing you as a first take, it was really good for the time. It was all paper, 300 pages of paper, and it had an index sheet on the left and detailed sheets on the right. And a lot of really good information. We'd have to go into a glossary to actually see the attribute data associated with different types of assets that we had. And, you know, so all that data was electronic. We would have to put together a work order form. We'd do an inspection. So take this paper in the field, inspect it, take that paper, bring it over to maintenance. Maintenance would log the hours they spent maintaining it. They give it back to me. I'd have to put it in the database and I'd file it into a bookshelf. We had a bookshelf that was the size of a whole wall of paper. We since took all that wall and now have it electronically. So electronic data collection, you know, it's like we ended this and then we know what we have, where it's at, when it's inspected, how to maintain it. Talk a little more about that. Don't try to understand this slide.
Good.
The bottom line is, this was actually Dan Kickert's brain at work, and it's complicated with a lot of foresight, a lot of thought that went into the development of this database on how to create the drop-down menus for this. So after many years, 2017, we finally established our Field Maps app. And so it included inventory data, attribute data, as well as photographs of each asset. We have iPads in the Vector truck with our street superintendent, our supervisors, and our inspectors. Anybody has access on their iPhone. So if you see a county worker on their iPhone, they're not necessarily texting, they're probably looking at collector or field maps. So county assets can be inspected and labeled as high, medium, low, critical, high, medium, low. Critical and high are the ones we maintain. We figure anything less than high priority is not high priority. So assets are then maintained, marked as completed. I'm going to kind of go through that real quick. This is what workforce looks like. So this is how we can send labor assets, let's say, into the field, be able to maintain items. So you see those icons on there, they're yellow, or I guess orange and red. You open up the app, and those are the ones that need maintenance right now in South Lake Tahoe. I just put this on there. So these are all the ones that need it. So the red ones are critical, the orange ones are high. We could just send assets into the field. They just geolocate right to the location. They know how to, they can maintain it. So it's critical and high. It's what we look. Structures, conveyances, pipes, treatments, guardrails, you name it. So here's an inspection and maintenance example. So right in the middle, we have that square. It's a drop inlet. It's a grate. I can look at that drop inlet. I can see it's structure ID. I can see it's a drainage inlet associated with this project. Built in 94, the location, it's reinforced concrete. It's 3 by 2 feet in diameter, in length and width. The total depth's 5.6 feet. The depth of the outlet's 2.2 feet. So I know it has greater than a 4-foot sump. So it can hold 4 feet of sediment in a 2 by 3 foot box. This one, you can look at all the inspection records going back to 2001 from this asset, all the way up to today, or whenever I did the last inspection. To create an inspection record, you just mark, its conditions bad, it's critical, it needs maintenance, needs factoring, clogged with sediment, and then I assign it to maintenance. Once we do that, it puts a red flag on there. They can drive right to that site and maintain it. When they get there, they click on the asset, they mark it as completed, right where it says maintenance status completed, and then it comes off the map. We know it's been maintained. We got an electronic signature, electronic record of the data, and we know it's been maintained and inspected. So atmospheric hotspots, this is what Brooke was alluding to. We have challenges up here in the winter, flooding, different areas that are, let's just say, get buried in snow and flood. So that's my girlfriend standing on top of a snowbank on the left in front of my parents' house. It's like a 12, 14-foot snowbank. There's drainage infrastructure underneath that. Challenging. This is when maintenance is really has to be on their A game, and it's a stressful situation. We got a 3 to 5 inch rainstorm coming on top of 10 to 12 feet of snow. That's me pointing out a drainage behind there, saying, hey, like the drainage is back there somewhere, right? So how do you prepare for a massive rainstorm when every structure you have is under 10 feet of snow? What sort of proactive measures do you take? What systems do you need in place to identify those assets? And how do you open all drainages filled with Sierra cement? We can use hand crews. We have the CCCs on staff, plus we have our own maintenance crews that can go out and maintain these things. The guy in the lower left there, on the left picture, that's a pipe at the bottom of about 10 to 12 foot snowbank. So it's buried under snow, 10, 12 feet. We could size that for the 1,000-year runoff event, and it will not convey it because it's completely chocked with snow. So it's not a design capacity issue, it's a condition issue. We can locate it with metal detectors. If we know where it's at and we could go right to it via GPS, we could take a metal detector and we can find where it's at. We could dig it out with a backhoe, front end loader, different things. I'd love to help out with that one day. So we did the atmospheric hotspots. We got together with everybody that knows where the flooding occurs, where the priority areas are when we have large rain and snow events, along with ones that we have existing liabilities with that potentially could be a problem, liability for the county. So then we can go to these assets, and every year we can do an inspection record on it. So we know it's been inspected, and if it's priority, it's maintained. If it comes back and they flood one year, they come back, we could show that it's actually been inspected and maintained. And these are all of our really hot spot areas, we call them. But also if the for loader, whatever that goes out there, they could see exactly where this is located, and they could see a picture of it. So they can reference themselves to where they're at to be able to find this under 10 feet of snow. So it's a really useful tool. So it limits guesswork to potential flooding in areas prone to flooding. It allows for maintenance records that are prone to flooding, and allows for annual maintenance of those areas prone to flooding, and then has an electronic record of it. Allows for streamlined maintenance prior to potentially catastrophic events, and keeps high priority sites on the radar to reduce those liabilities. So in the end, we've done a lot of other stuff with the Caldor fire, different things I could show, but I got only a couple, like 1 minute left. In the end, we can export the data. Everything's logged in collector and field maps and stored in ArcGIS Inline. So it's available electronically. It can be queried for record keeping, logging, and tracking this information. The inspection records are accessible to both management and all staff at the county. It can be seen in field maps. And it's now being used to track this rapid assessment metadata. It's a state regulatory requirement under the program that I run under Brendan for compliance. And so it's a nice way to be able to do that. So we're going to continue refining this tool, make it better. I think it's already about as good as it can get. It's one of the best in the nation. More efficient at data querying, being able to export this information, incorporate cost data, is potential for that, never a bad thing. Continue West Slope data collection. I'd say we've inventoried about 45% of the West Slope. We've hired interns from Sac State University and UC Davis, engineering interns. And we have a real comprehensive network of mapping down there. It just needs to be expanded on, and we need people to use it or it's not as useful. And then continue using this on electronic devices. It's really a powerful tool. Public utility assets, sanitary sewer, Christie boxes from water valves, different things like that, knowing that in relation to our infrastructure, as well as road rehabilitation. When we're rehabbing a road, if we know where our publicly owned treatment works infrastructure is relative to our infrastructure, it makes overlaying roads a lot more simplified. Plus, we can look at limits of roads and be able to estimate, I think, a little bit better as far as quantities. So it's just another potential. Actually, the maintenance division started using that this year. The South Tahoe maintenance guys are really good with this, and they're on board with our program. Incorporating pavement condition index, as Brooke alluded to, our pavement condition is pretty bad. So being able to know what this is relative to PCI and have a layer we can turn on and off, and then training. Again, if it's not used, it's not as useful. So that's it. That's my famous Tahoe pothole I found one day. And I'm not going to go into it, but I saved this for another presentation one day. There's a direct correlation between our deteriorating roads and the amount of stuff that comes off them. So the loading of pollutants that comes off a road is directly correlated to the pavement condition index. So I'm calling call it a campaign here, paving the road to clarity. I think we could pave the roads and actually get a water quality benefit. With that, I'll end and field any questions you guys have.
My goodness, I'm blown away. I am blown away by this tool, the data you have, the process that you've been embarking on. It's just phenomenal. And I can see how it could be just a necessity as you're dealing with winter conditions and
Absolutely.
having the pressure and the responsibility to maintain a public infrastructure system. Just remarkable. Supervisor
Yeah,
Lane?
and this was not done just by myself. I'm a cog in the machine.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
so
incredible.
there's a lot of good people that have been involved in this.
Oh, I
effort.
have no doubt. Yeah,
Yeah.
one person could not have done all this, although I'm sure you've been a driving force.
Yeah, Dan and I and Brendan, Donaldo, for sure.
Amazing team, amazing work. Yeah, Supervisor Lane?
I first became aware of this system. I meet with the Tahoe Planning Department. Is it every other month?
Yeah.
I wish it was every month. It's my
Bi-monthly.
favorite meeting ever. These people sit around this table and they talk to each other. Hey, who's going out and checking that? Are you going to check it? Are you checking it today? Okay, then I'll go out tomorrow and I'll do this, that, or the other. But this first came to my attention when I didn't understand a road that they were talking about. And they said, oh, well, we can just pull it up for you. And they pulled it up on a big screen and said, here's where the culvert is, here's where the guardrails are, here's where the problem is. It was amazing. So I really wanted you to see this because really it would be ideal if the whole county was doing this. Just think of the information you would have for each of your districts.
And helping deal with some of the challenges that we
Yep.
know are there, but we don't have
Yeah.
all the information.
And, take the knowledge of our staff and, get it to rise to the top, like Mr. Weigert just mentioned, with the road and clarity to the future. These guys have all the information, all the experience and the ideas, and we need to somehow figure out a way to get them to come to the surface. So great job.
I'd say at this point, we're probably about 10 years ahead of the West Slope as far as the
Yeah, I
development
think
of
so,
this.
because
Well
we
done.
started 10 years ago. Yeah.
Well done, incredible. Any board comments or questions?
My question is, how do you estimate maintenance costs when you're just discovering all these things that you're responsible for? I mean, that's the primary issue. How do you determine what your future costs are going to be? Because I see these things escalating in a time period when revenues are declining. So we're going to have some real challenges.
We actually have a dashboard Dan's been working on for a little while, and it has age of infrastructure associated with it. It doesn't have cost yet, but it's got age. So if you know that you have ones from the 60s, those are going to be higher priority over ones from the late 90s. So that's one way. And then as far as annual maintenance costs, that's really up to maintenance, but there's a designated budget annually for certain types of maintenance activities. So it's all just about prioritizing it from critical to high.
Okay, I understand. Thanks.
Well, we so appreciate gaining a new understanding of the infrastructure tools that you have at your disposal up here. Just quite inspiring. Thank you so much. So at this point, let's take public comment on our Tahoe Planning Stormwater Management Program or Public Works Infrastructure Asset Management System, or comments on any of the tour facilities and projects that we are going to see. So Kim, can you open up public comment?
Now, excuse me, now taking public comment on item number 24 and locations on the field trip scheduled for this afternoon. Individuals will have 3 minutes to address the board. The timer will notify you when your time is up. Public comment will be taken first from those participating in the boardroom and then from those participating through Zoom. For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. If you're joining the meeting by phone, press *9 to indicate a desire to comment. If you're joining by Zoom, press the raise hand button. Please voluntarily state your name for the record.
Anyone like to comment on this item? All right, seeing none, let's go online, Kim.
Now taking public comment from online participants. There's no public comment.
Well, on behalf of the board, it has been an absolute pleasure to be here with you in Tahoe. We look forward to coming back. I believe we're going to be coming back in the fall, and want to express our deep gratitude to the South Lake Tahoe City Council for these beautiful chambers and staff support. It's just been remarkable, and we truly appreciate it. That's not an easy thing to do. So at this point, we invite the public to join us at the locations that are listed on our agenda. And we will now, the meeting will be recessed while in transit and reconvened at each identified location no earlier than the arrival time specified. And you're welcome to join us. And we once again thank you for the warm welcome to the Tahoe Basin, and we'll hope to see you on the tour.
And I would just follow that up, Madam Chair, if it's okay, is
Please.
just to say that this woman has done a remarkable job keeping us on track today.
Yes.
And she's actually given us 8 minutes if you want to go use the restrooms
break,
or
yep.
fill up your water bottle. This would be a great time to do it. We are leaving promptly from the parking lot at 2 o'clock.
Perfect.
Okay.
And finally, I'd like to express deep appreciation to Supervisor Lane and Lisa for the immense coordination, along with our with Kim and Kaylee and our clerk's staff for facilitating all this. Just a really well done, and we truly appreciate all your facilitation.
How long are we out and about? How long are we out and about? 2 hours?
We'll no more than 2 hours, probably an hour and 50 minutes.
Is there going to be an opportunity for a stop along the way, or should I stop drinking water now?
There will be at the Department of Transportation.
Okay,
Yes.
halfway.
halfway.
Corey
Thank
made
you
that.
all. You can leave your stuff at the DS also. We'll clean up when we get back. Yeah, you can leave stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can just leave it.
I'm just gonna take the tour map.
Yeah.
Mark's here.